Chapter 2989. Yes. Li Zongbao was respectful to Kai Haisong, but not to Kai Yang. He returned the greeting casually. The war is over. My achievements are history. There's no need to mention it again. I admire fellow cultivator Li for treating fame and fortune as fleeting clouds. Possible? I wonder if I could invite fellow cultivator Li to the Qingyang Kai family as a guest? The thousands of disciples of the Qingyang Kai family admire fellow cultivator Li very much. Kai Yang didn't seem to find Li Zongbao's attitude inappropriate and asked politely. I came here with junior sister Hongxia for some business. I'll return to the Utopia faction when I'm done. Li Zongbao was a little impatient, but he didn't want to cause trouble for Kai Haisong. He said evasively, if there's an opportunity in the future, it won't be too late for me to go. Seeing that Li Zongbao didn't refuse immediately, which was different from the rumors, Kai Yang was very happy. He hurriedly took out a message charm and handed it to Li Zongbao. He smiled and said, if fellow cultivator Li comes to visit, please send a message to me as soon as possible. The disciples of the Qingyang Kai family welcome you. Li Zongbao's face was calm. Although there was anxiety in his eyes, he still reached out to take it. Fellow cultivator Xiao, Kai Hongfeng said coldly without waiting for Kai Yang to speak. This is the second time we've met. Xiaohua looked up and down at Kai Hongfeng. He didn't seem to have any intention of fighting, so he nodded calmly. I didn't expect that a little level 4 Qi refining cultivator would become a foundation establishment cultivator who dominated the Taoist sword war. Kai Hongfeng continued, however, how are you going to explain the fact that fellow Taoist Xiao killed Kai Xia, a disciple of my Kai family? How will I explain it? Xiaohua smiled, I've already told you about this matter several decades ago. Could it be that great elder Kai has already forgotten? Of course I remember it. Kai Hongfeng laughed. But this is the life of a direct disciple of the Kai family. I don't know if fellow cultivator Xiao will give us an explanation now. Hongfeng, Kai Yang scolded him as expected. Why do you keep harping on what happened in the past and refuse to let go? Who was fellow cultivator Xiao before? Who is fellow Taoist Xiao now? In the past, fellow Taoist Xiao was just a rogue cultivator. But now, fellow Taoist Xiao is not only an elite disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, but also a member of the first team in the Tao Sect's discussion hall. He is a person with outstanding military exploits and is not far from being able to command the entire Shi country. How could he not give the Kai family an explanation? Even if he doesn't give us an explanation, won't the Imperial Thunder Sect give us an explanation? Won't the leader of the first squad give us an explanation? Li Zongbao stared blankly. He didn't know that Xiaohua actually had a grudge with Qingyang's Kai family. However, he looked at Xiaohua and then at Kai Yang. He said indifferently, this is junior brother Zhao's own matter. It has nothing to do with my discussion hall's first team. If you have anything to say, just tell him directly. I won't interfere. Hearing this, Kai Yang's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he didn't quite understand. He was obviously giving Li Zongbao face. Li Zongbao only needed to say one word, no, just half a word, and he would definitely accept it. But he didn't think, heh. Xiaohua also chuckled, Kai family head, I'm sure you've heard the great elder's report on what happened that day. The truth of the matter is right there, but this Xiao is not willing to talk about it. If Kai family head wants to seek justice for Kai Xia, then I will accept it. At this time, not only does it have nothing to do with the discussion hall's first team, it also has nothing to do with the Imperial Thunder Sect. There, Kai Yang laughed. He could only reply, no matter what the matter is, and no matter how great the impact fellow Taoist Xiao has caused, fellow Taoist Xiao is after all a great hero of the Shi country. How can this old man make a move? Today, in front of fellow Taoist Li of the Utopia sect, this old man will make a decision. The previous matter will be overturned. If fellow Taoist Xiao accompanies fellow Taoist Li to my Qingyang's Kai family, my Kai family will still treat you as a distinguished guest. Thank you so much, Kai family head. Xiaohua was slightly stunned. However, he didn't want to be at odds with the Qingyang's Kai family and make things difficult for Kai Haisong, so he bowed and said, unexpectedly, Kai Yong didn't return the bow, but accepted it directly. He really regarded Xiao Hua as a cultivator in the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. Then he turned to Fairy Hong Xia with a solemn face and raised his hand. This old man greets Fairy Hong Xia. Fairy Hong Xia naturally didn't dare to be negligent. She hurriedly bowed and returned the bow. She smiled and said, "Family head, you don't have to be so polite. The fairy's order was just a joke. Family head is a senior, how can you address me in such a manner? If you were still a disciple of the Kai family, this old man would definitely call you Fairy Hong Xia, and definitely not say a word more." Kai Yang said lightly. "However, you are now a disciple of the Huanhua sect, and also a member of the discussion hall's first team in the Great Battle of Dao Sword. Your name is now known all over the world. As the family head of the Kai family, this old man has to address you as Fairy Hong Xia. Senior, you think too highly of this junior." Fairy Hong Xia frowned slightly, but still nodded. "Fairy Hong Xia is from the Kai family. Now that you are a disciple of the Huanhua sect, you have achieved great military exploits. While the Huanhua sect is proud of you, you have also brought glory to the Kai family. You have set an excellent example for the disciples of the Kai family. It is enough for the cultivators of the three kingdoms to see the prestige of the Kai family. This is excellent. Even if this old man, even the previous generations of family heads of the Kai family, would not be able to achieve such a feat. Not only the Kai family of Liang, but also the Kai family of Qingyang. All the disciples of the Kai family will be proud of you. This junior wouldn't dare." Fairy Hong Xia said softly. However, as expected, Kai Yang changed the topic and said, "You are now a disciple of the Huanhua sect. You must remember your status. Although you have military exploits, but you must not be arrogant and cannot be complacent. Fellow Taoist Li said it very well just now. Military exploits represent the past and have become fleeting clouds. You must not sleep on your military exploits." Yes, this junior understands. Fairy Hong Xia's frown deepened, but she still replied. "However, the war is not over yet. Why did you suddenly return to Luoyang? Did you come back on the orders of the Huanhua sect to visit your family?" As he spoke, Kai Yang's gaze swept to his left, but he did not see the token of the Huanhua sect. "Now is the time of war. Would the Huanhua sect allow you to return to Luoyang?" This junior was out training and happened to pass by Luoyang. "I thought that I had not seen my family for a long time, so I came back to take a look." Fairy Hong Xia bit her lip, her voice even softer. You are filial. To think of the Kai family, this old man has to say that you are not bad." Kai Yang nodded. "However, you do not have the token of the Huanhua sect. It is not proper for you to return to Liang, so you should hurry back. This old man will pretend that I did not see you." "Fellow Taoist Kai," Li Zongbao spoke up, "I have been rushing about and am indeed tired. I need to rest for a while, before I can move." "All right." Kai Yang nodded. Fellow Taoist Li's words make sense. The first team of the meeting hall can rest anywhere. Naturally, Liang can too. However, Kai Hongfeng said, "Since you are part of the first team of the meeting hall, you are a disciple of a cultivation sect. You cannot interfere with the family affairs of the cultivation aristocratic families." Li Zongbao frowned and nodded. "Indeed. Aristocratic family affairs are handled by the aristocratic families themselves. The various sects and clans will not interfere." Kai Yang continued. "Since fellow Taoist Li has said so, I can rest assured. Moreover, Fairy Hong Xia from the Huanhua sect is here today. This saves me the trouble of explaining things to her alone in the future." When Fairy Hong Xia heard Kai Yang first accuse her of being a disciple of the Huanhua sect, then confirmed Li Zongbao and Xiao Hua's identities as part of the first team of the meeting hall, and then brought up the aristocratic family affairs, she felt that something was amiss. She was surprised and quickly looked up at Kai Haisong. As expected, Kai Haisong had a complicated expression on his face. Clearly, he understood Kai Yang's arrival and his intentions very well. Fairy Hong Xia felt a pang in her heart. She knew that her father would rather take on this responsibility himself. He would rather put himself in a difficult position than let her know. After Kai Yang finished speaking, he no longer paid any attention to Fairy Hong Xia and the rest. He turned to Kai Haisong and said lightly, "Haisong, what I told you a few days ago, have you thought it through?" Reporting to family head, "I have thought it through." Kai Haisong did not dare to delay and quickly replied. What do you mean?" A smile appeared on Kai Yang's face. "Do you think this old man's suggestion is good?" Kai Haisong took a deep breath and shook his head. Reporting to family head, although the Kai family of Luyang is a branch of the Kai family of Qingyang, for thousands of years, we have been living in a remote corner. In Luyang, in Yang Cauldron Mountain, we have been deeply rooted in Luyang. There is no reason for us to move to Qingyang and become one with the Kai family of Qingyang. "Then, you are against it?" Kai Yang's face was obviously stunned as he asked coldly. "That's right, I am against family head's suggestion." Kai Haisong nodded. "Is it your idea or everyone's idea?" Kai Yang glanced at Kai Shansong and the rest and asked again. Kai Haisong hurriedly said, "I am the family head of the Kai family of Luyang. I am the only one who can make this decision. I don't need their opinions." "Haisong, oh Haisong, I have overestimated you." Kai Yang shook his head vigorously with a pained expression. He seemed to be extremely disappointed. "I thought that you would place the interests of the Kai family above everything else. But now, you have really disappointed me. You are so short-sighted. You only see your own power and forgot about the development of the Kai family. This really hurts me." Kai Haisong, Kai Hongfeng, who was beside him, also mocked him. Now that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth on Xiaoyu continent has changed greatly, all kinds of cultivation techniques and secret techniques are gradually losing their effectiveness. The future of the disciples of the cultivation sects is bleak. As for the disciples of the cultivation sects, because of their bloodline, they are like fish in water in the mutated spiritual energy. Many of them have awakened their true spirit bloodline and obtained true spirit celestial bodies. As a result, the strength of those sects is rapidly expanding, and the speed of their development is much faster than before. Our Kai family is the descendant of the Ice Phoenix. Our true spirit bloodline is famous in Xiaoyu continent. We should be standing at the forefront during this turbulent time. How can you be so short-sighted? Chapter 2990. Due to various historical reasons, our Kai family has split up quite a bit. Kai Yang also tried to persuade him. And your Kai family of Luyang is one of the bigger branches. If you all move back to Qingyang, our Kai family's power will definitely increase by a lot. In particular, our Kai family of Qingyang will also be open to the Kai family of Luyang. This is killing two birds with one stone. It's also something that I've discussed with the elders for a long time. You can't do this for your own selfish reasons. Patriarch Qingyang. Without waiting for Kai Yang to finish, Kai Shansong immediately said, "You may mean well, but our Kai family of Luyang has lived here for thousands of years and is already used to the scenery here. Before the Kai family of Qingyang, our Kai family of Luyang developed extremely well. In the future, all the disciples of the Kai family of Luyang also feel that we can live better with our own strength. So, at this point, Kai Shansong dragged his voice and said, all the disciples of the Kai family of Luyang have unanimously agreed to stay in Luyang. This is not the decision of the patriarch of the Kai family of Luyang alone." "How dare you?" Kai Hongfeng scolded. "Kai Shansong, what right do you have to speak here?" Kai Shansong gritted his teeth and lowered his head slightly, suppressing his rebuttal. "Haisong, the benefits of having all the disciples of the Kai family in one place far outweigh the disadvantages. I've already explained the details in the jade slip I gave you earlier. If the Kai family of Qingyang and the Kai family of Luyang work together, it'll be 2 wins and 2 losses. You must consider this carefully." Kai Yang looked at Kai Haisong, Kai Shansong, and the others and continued to persuade earnestly. "Patriarch Qingyang, please understand." Kai Haisong bit his lip and continued to shake his head. "The Kai family of Luyang has been separated from the Kai family of Qingyuan for too long. How can we move just like that? This matter needs to be considered in the long run." Kai Haisong. Kai Hongfeng's face paled again. He said coldly, "This matter has already been unanimously approved by the elders of the Kai family. If your Kai family of Liang is still a branch of the Kai family of Qingyuan, you must listen to the arrangements of the Kai family of Qingyuan. Patriarch, this matter is too complicated. It needs to be considered in the long run." Kai Haisong hurriedly cried out. "Haisong, you've really disappointed me. This last chance has slipped away from your hands. Don't blame me for punishing you." Kai Yang let out a long sigh. He looked at Fairy Hong Xia, whose expression was not good, and said, "Now, in front of the disciples of the Kai family of the Huanhua sect, I will let her know that some of my decisions are not made without thinking. They are not made on a whim." As he spoke, Kai Yang clapped his hands and took out a token similar to the Phoenix token. He raised it high above his head and shouted, "Liang's Kai family's Kai Haisong refuses to accept the decision of the Kai family's elder council. He doesn't place the Kai family's future in his eyes and only considers his own personal interests. He is no longer able to convince the masses and is no longer qualified to lead the Kai family of Liang. Now, I request the Kai family's Phoenix token to remove Kai Haisong from the position of Liang's Kai family's patriarch and hand it over to Liang's Kai family's Kai Shansong. All Kai family disciples, listen up." Phoenix token? When Xiaohua saw the Phoenix token in Kai Yang's hand, he couldn't help but look at Fairy Hong Xia. However, Fairy Hong Xia was so angry that her whole body was trembling. She still didn't take out the Phoenix token that she had inherited from the Phoenix inheritance. Not only that, the Phoenix mark between her eyebrows had been hidden by her at some point. "Patriarch." Just as Xiaohua looked at Fairy Hong Xia, Kai Shansong shouted, "Big brother is the true patriarch of the Kai family. This junior's talent is shallow and cannot be compared to Big brother. This junior cannot take over the position of patriarch of the Kai family." How can the position of patriarch of the Kai family of Liang be decided by the likes of you? Our Kai family's elder council has already made a decision and there is no reason to change it. Kai Shansong, you have to accept it even if you don't want to. As Kai Yang spoke, he looked around and saw that the disciples of the Kai family of Liang were all indignant. He raised the Phoenix token in his hand and said, "This is our Kai family's Phoenix token. As a disciple of the Kai family and a descendant of the Ice Phoenix bloodline, seeing this token is like seeing our ancestors. Who is dissatisfied? Kneel." Suddenly, a clear phoenix cry sounded from the Phoenix token. Immediately, a phoenix celestial body flew out from Kai Yang's body. A powerful aura was emitted from the Phoenix token as Kai Yang let out a thunderous roar. Plop plop. Several disciples in the 7th stage of Qi refining could not resist the power of the Phoenix token and involuntarily knelt on the ground. Which Kai family disciple dares to disobey the Phoenix token? All of you kneel. Kai Hongfeng shouted. However, following Kai Hongfeng's voice, an even more furious and shrill voice came from Fairy Hong Xia's mouth. "Xiaohua, do you still want to enter my Kai family?" Xiaohua was taken aback. He had originally thought that Fairy Hong Xia would release her own Ice Phoenix Dharma body, but he hadn't expected that Fairy Hong Xia would be so meticulous. She didn't give Qin Yang Kai family any leverage at all, and actually let him take action. Since his wife had spoken, what else did Xiaohua have to worry about? Xiaohua let out a hee-hee and smacked his forehead with his hand. A huge gust of wind whistled out from Xiaohua's body, and a wave of pressure several times stronger than the Phoenix token was emitted at the same time. Moreover, as Xiaohua brushed his hand away from his forehead, the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth instantly gathered, and a huge palm was born in midair. With a thunderous momentum, it grabbed at the 30-meter-tall Phoenix Dharma body. This is probably the nascent soul stage. Xiaohua's pressure swept across the area. All the Kai family disciples, including Kai Yang and Kai Hongfeng, immediately froze. They could not even move their little fingers. In particular, a kind of fear came from the bottom of their hearts. It was almost an instinctive feeling. They all let out the same groan from the bottom of their hearts. When Xiaohua's nascent soul hand appeared, A power that could control heaven and earth was released from the nascent soul hand. It firmly grasped Kai Yang's phoenix celestial body and Kai Hongfeng's physical body. A kind of incomparable shock emerged from the Kai family's hearts. They almost could not believe that Xiao Hua, who was only at the middle foundation establishment stage, suddenly became a nascent soul stage Xiao Hua. Wu Ming. Kai Yang suddenly woke up and his face changed dramatically. Kai Yang's phoenix celestial body, which was not very clear to begin with, was quickly destroyed. Pieces of it cracked and slowly sank into Kai Yang's physical body. Do you want to live or die? Xiao Hua laughed sinisterly. The nascent soul hand fell and grabbed the two arrogant foundation establishment stage cultivators in his hand. It was as if he was holding two little chicks. Fairy Hong Xia sneered. She did not answer. Instead, she said, "This is what fellow Taoist Xiao did. It has nothing to do with the Kai family of Liang. Their life and death is up to fellow Taoist Xiao." Senior Xiao. Kai Haisong hurriedly called out from the side. Family head Kai Yang was thinking of the Kai family bloodline. Although this action was a bit reckless, but his intention was not wrong. Senior, please be magnanimous and don't hurt the family head of Kai family. Xiao Hua snorted coldly and scolded, "Kai Yang, did you hear that clearly? If the family head of Kai family of Liang did not plead for you, I would definitely take your life. Today's matter is my doing. If you want to find trouble with me, you can come to the Imperial Thunder Sect. I will welcome you at any time. Moreover, you must keep today's matter a secret. If I find out that my secret was discovered, I will definitely kill my way to the Kai family of Liang." After he finished speaking, Xiao Hua waved his sleeve and threw out his nascent soul hand. He didn't wait for Kai Yang and Kai Hongfeng to speak and threw them into the air. In a moment, they disappeared without a trace. The phoenix token that fell into the air turned into a shooting star and chased after them. Xiao Hua looked at the phoenix token that he did not know if was real or fake. He did not stop them and waved his sleeves again. The nascent soul's hand disappeared and he slowly descended from the air. Silence, silence, incomparable silence. All the Kai family disciples, including Kai Haisong, did not dare to breathe loudly as they looked at Xiao Hua carefully. Whether it was nameless or a nascent soul grandmaster, they were all characters that the Kai family disciples did not dare to imagine. None of them could wake up from this contrast. That's right. Just now, an hour ago, other than Kai Haisong, everyone was secretly complaining that Fairy Hong Xia did not capture Li Zongbao. But after an hour, Xiao Hua revealed his strength and easily captured Kai Yang, who was in the late foundation establishment stage, and Kai Hongfeng, who was in the middle foundation establishment stage. Who would dare to look down on Fairy Hong Xia? Who would dare to look down on Xiao Hua, a small rogue cultivator who came to Liang's Kai family several decades ago? Only 40 years? Or 50 years? Kai Haisong was shocked, but he slowly came to his senses. An incomparable feeling welled up in his heart. I've only cultivated from the 10th layer of qi refining to the early stage of foundation establishment, and yet I feel so proud and self-satisfied. After all, it's been a long time since a foundation establishment patriarch has appeared in the Kai clan. But compared to this Xiao Hua's days have been lived like a dog's body. That day, he was only at the 4th level of qi refining. Today, he is actually a nascent soul grandmaster. All the cultivators below the golden core stage in the 3 cultivation countries have lived like a dog's body. The first stage of the Great War of Sword Dao is based on the golden core stage. Xiao Hua is a nascent soul stage cultivator. In the Great War of Sword Dao, who would be his opponent? This Li Zongbao, who is known as the number 1 cultivator below the golden core stage, would probably follow Xiao Hua's lead. With him, the discussion hall's first team would naturally be able to achieve outstanding merits. That Qin Jian, who is at the 3rd level of the sword transformation stage, would naturally be killed by him. All the merits of the discussion hall's first team were obtained by Xiao Hua alone. Everyone in the Dao sect guessed that the answer to the mystery lies with Xiao Hua alone. Li Zongbao, who is the center of attention, is only a puppet, a shield in front of Xiao Hua. All the unimaginable merits of the discussion hall's first team, there is only one truth. Chapter 2991. Senior Xiao. Kai Haisong stuttered, not knowing how to address him. After regaining his senses, he hurriedly bowed respectfully. Earlier we were too slow. At the same time, all the Kai family disciples regained their senses and bowed, all of them wanting to address Xiao Hua as senior. Xiao Hua's methods towards others were like thunderbolts, but towards Fairy Hong Xia's family, how could he dare to show the slightest bit of negligence? He hurriedly flicked his sleeves, and a powerful force was generated, holding everyone back. He rushed towards Kai Haisong and said anxiously, "Senior Kai, will you still allow me to enter the Kai family in the future?" Fairy Hong Xia, who was standing at the side, immediately laughed out loud. She was also filled with hatred just now, but she could not directly contend with the Kai family head, so she asked Xiao Hua to help. She was supposed to transmit her voice, but in her extreme anger, she forgot to do so. Hearing Xiao Hua's aggrieved cry, her face was flushed red, and her eyes were filled with pride. Yes, Kai Haisong was also bursting with joy. With such a nascent soul-stage son-in-law in Luyang's Kai family, let alone the Qingyang Kai family, in the entire country of in the entire 3 kingdoms of cultivation, who would dare to challenge Luyang's Kai family? "Father, don't bow to him." Fairy Hong Xia curled her lips and said, "His nascent soul stage cultivation is just a bluff. It's just a golden core stage cultivation. But when he brings out his nascent soul stage spiritual sense, it can scare others. He really is a nascent soul stage cultivator." Everyone suddenly understood. Fairy Hong Xia's words were a little too obvious. How could others believe it? They only thought that she was being modest. Even if he's a golden core stage cultivator, this old man can't compare to him. Kai Haisong said with a smile, "Come, Xiao, calling me Xiao Hua is enough." Xiao Hua smiled tactfully. Xiao Hua, this isn't the first time you've come to my Kai family. Last time, this old man already treated you rudely. Today, I won't dare to do it again." Kai Haisong really wanted to praise Li Zongbao, but when the words reached the tip of his tongue, he felt that they wouldn't be appropriate, so he could only force himself to swallow them back. After a few simple words, he turned to Li Zongbao and said, "Fellow Taoist Li, this is your first time visiting our Kai family. Although we didn't open our doors to welcome fellow Taoist Li, by a freak combination of factors, we did so to welcome fellow Taoist Li to our Kai family. Fellow Taoist Li, please." "Senior Kai, you're too courteous." Li Zongbao's words stunned Kai Haisong, but what happened next confused Kai Haisong even more. Because Xiao Hua had already revealed his cultivation base, in accordance with the etiquette of the 3 kingdoms of cultivation, Xiao Hua should have walked in front of Li Zongbao. Although Li Zongbao had received Kai Haisong's invitation, this invitation came after Xiao Hua's, so he naturally didn't move. Instead, he waited for Xiao Hua to walk first. However, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Senior brother Li, now that we're home, if we're talking about etiquette, senior brother should still go first." Li Zongbao's tense face revealed a trace of unnaturalness, but he didn't refute. He walked in front of Xiao Hua while Xiao Hua followed behind him. "We're home? Talking about etiquette?" Kai Haisong really couldn't make sense of it, but he suddenly remembered what Fairy Hong Xia wanted to say to him before Kai Yang arrived. He turned to look at Fairy Hong Xia. "Let's talk inside." When Fairy Hong Xia saw the rare joy in the Kai family, or rather, the jubilant atmosphere, she felt a little miserable in her heart. It was as if there was one less person to stick a dogwood in all the places. Kai Haisong nodded and invited Fairy Hong Xia to lead the way. Then, he led his clan brothers and followed behind. The Kai family's guest hall had been completely renovated and was much larger than before. Xiao Hua and the others sat in the guest seats, accompanied by Kai Haisong and several other Kai Family Foundation establishment cultivators. There were also a dozen 11th layer Qi refinement disciples standing below them. It didn't seem crowded at all. It was obvious how fast the Kai family had developed over the past few decades. A few pretty Qi refinement cultivators deftly served spiritual tea and spiritual fruits. Every disciple stole glances at Xiao Hua, then winked at Fairy Hong Xia and left with a smile. Even the Qi refinement cultivators standing in wait stared at Xiao Hua without blinking. Not every Kai family disciple had seen a nascent soul cultivator before. Xiao Hua was the first nascent soul cultivator they had seen in their lives. What's more, this nascent soul cultivator was their future relative. Fellow Taoist Li, please have some tea. Xiao Hua, please have some tea. Since Xiao Hua allowed Li Zongbao to enter the Kai family first, Kai Haisong put Li Zongbao's name first even though he didn't understand why. Please, Li Zongbao knew this was a necessary etiquette. Although he was a little anxious, he had to wait. With Xiao Hua, this so-called brother-in-law, he couldn't lose face in the eyes of the Kai family. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Kai Haisong knew Fairy Hong Xia and the others didn't just return to Luoyang to visit, so he didn't say anything else. He didn't even mention the battle between Dao and Sword. He said, Hong Xia, what did you say just now? In June, let the Qi refinement cultivators leave. We have something important to discuss, Fairy Hong Xia commanded without any trace of politeness. Also, prepare a family banquet. Make it clear that no one is allowed to come within 100 feet of the guest hall. Yes, little brother understands. Kai Yingjun didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly got up and ordered the disciples to leave. Although the Qi refinement cultivators were a little reluctant, when they thought about how their master had something important to do and how they could get closer to a nascent soul cultivator during the family banquet later, they happily left. After the Qi refinement cultivators left, Kai Yingjun and Kai Hongxing whispered again, Elder sister, do we need to leave? You're the candidates for the next patriarch of our Kai family. This is our family's housework, so you don't need to leave. Fairy Hong Xia looked at Kai Haisong and gave her instructions very naturally. In fact, she had already done this long before she left Luoyang and joined Huanhua sect. Today, she returned to the Kai family with a cultivation base in the late stage of the foundation building realm, so no one felt that it was inappropriate. Yes, Kai Yingjun and Kai Hongxing sat down obediently. They lowered their heads and looked down, leaving only their ears exposed. Father, it's like this. Fairy Hong Xia glanced at the curious gazes of Kai Haisong and the others. She took a deep breath and told them about the matter between Kai Zhuixia and Li Zongbao. She also told them about the result of using the Netherlink mirror during their trip to Mount Wan. Finally, she said to the stunned crowd, who couldn't believe their ears, so, I brought senior brother Li and Xiao Hua back in a hurry, wanting to see elder sister's grave. How is this possible? After a long while, Kai Haisong rubbed his eyes and said with a hint of sadness, back then, Zhuixia's corpse was sent by Xiao Hua, and we also examined it. Big brother, Kai Shansong said anxiously, Hongxia and Zongbao have already gone to Mount Wan. Even the soul cultivators there said that Zhuixia isn't dead, so she's definitely not dead. What are we waiting for? Let's go and take a look. At this time, Kai Haisong was startled, and he jumped up from the jade chair with a bang. Today had given him a lot of stimulation. Not to mention that Xiao Hua was Fairy Hong Xia's lover, not to mention that Xiao Hua had actually become a gold core cultivator, and not to mention that Li Zongbao had actually also become his son-in-law. Just the fact that Kai Zhuixia was still alive was something that he had never dreamed of. He was really numb. He said, that's right, Hongxia. We'll go to the grave now. The second one to jump up was naturally Li Zongbao. He had been waiting for a long time and had been enduring, challenging his limits. Now that he heard Kai Haisong's order, he could no longer hold back. Kai Fengsong and the others looked at Li Zongbao curiously. They really wanted to know how this young and handsome man, who was famous throughout the cultivation world, knew Kai Zhuixia, and how he had been thinking about the dead Kai Zhuixia for so many years. This was absolutely unimaginable in the cultivation world. However, when they saw Li Zongbao get up, they hurriedly followed him. Even if he was the son-in-law of the Kai clan, he was still a late-stage foundation establishment senior. The Kai family's burial mound was on the other side of Yang Cauldron Mountain. It was a place that was surrounded by mountains and rivers. Rows of willow trees grew luxuriantly, and thousands of willow branches swayed in the wind as they streaked across the sky. A tranquil and serene aura filled the entire valley. When they were less than a mile away from the green tiles and white walls, Kai Haisong descended from the sky and said apologetically, "Zongbao, Xiaohua, my Kai clan has a rule. Everyone who is going to the grave can't fly directly to the entrance. They can only walk for this last mile." "Very good." Li Zongbao nodded and didn't say anything else. He just lowered his head and hurried on. Xiaohua echoed, "In addition, we can't even use divine sense." Hee, Xiaohua is right. However, my Kai clan didn't have many foundation establishment disciples before. We didn't even have a 12th layer Qi refinement cultivator. How could we have thought of using divine sense? Kai Haisong replied awkwardly. Indeed. Xiaohua scratched his head. He was very embarrassed that his words had embarrassed the Kai clan head. When they were about 100 feet away from the grave's white walls and black doors, 2 Kai clan disciples around the 3rd layer of Qi refinement hurriedly walked out from a side door. Both of them looked to be in their 30s. One of them was a male cultivator who looked rather spirited. The other was a female cultivator. Her appearance was still charming and her figure could be considered enchanting. However, her waist was already a little too fat. The 2 of them should be the disciples guarding the grave. They had just received the news and came to serve them. However, the 2 of them stood respectfully. When Kai Haisong and the others approached, the male cultivator respectfully saluted while the female cultivator stood there in a daze. She stared straight at the approaching Xiaohua and even forgot to salute. The male cultivator was greatly alarmed. He hastily pulled the female cultivator's clothes and indicated for her to salute. Only then did the female cultivator grit her teeth and lower her head. Xiaohua naturally sensed that he was being stared at. However, he frowned and looked at the female cultivator. Her appearance was unfamiliar. He didn't seem to recognize her. Chapter 2992. Xiaohua thought about how he had visited the Kai family before. Perhaps he had seen them before, so he didn't mind. However, when the 2 greeted Kai Haisong, he suddenly realized. Because the female cultivator called herself Kai Mei, if he wasn't mistaken, she was the little girl who had brought him to the Kai family at that time, Mei. Kai Haisong didn't care about this. After the 2 greeted each other, he ordered the door to the spirit tomb to open. Xiaohua asked, "Are you that Mei? Big brother immortal?" Kai Mei was pleasantly surprised. She bowed again. "I didn't expect that big brother would still remember Mei. Alas." Xiaohua sighed. He looked at the somewhat plump woman in front of him. If she hadn't cultivated to the 3rd layer of Qi refining, and if she hadn't been born into a cultivation family, she would have already become one of the most plump people in the secular world. That childish, crisp voice, that little girl who had walked out from behind the stone sculpture in the distance, that thin and weak figure, and that pair of big, black eyes, they had all been eaten by dogs. Although those big eyes still had some shadows of the past when he looked at them carefully, it was just that those originally clear and pure eyes had now been polluted by the secular world. They were full of flattery and expectation, making Xiaohua feel inexplicably disappointed. "Your grandfather?" Although Xiaohua knew the ending, he still couldn't help but want to ask the unworldly expert who wasn't an unworldly expert. "Thank you, big brother immortal, for still remembering grandfather." Kai Mei's face was mournful. Although grandfather took big brother's elixir, his body was already empty. He passed away 20 years ago. And everyone has to die in this life. Your grandfather was able to do so much for Lu Yang, so he can already rest in peace. Xiaohua nodded. Then he saw that the male cultivator had already opened the black door and was about to leave. However, he still asked casually, "Mei, are you doing well in the Kai family?" "Very well." Kai Mei was a bit hesitant. She timidly glanced at Kai Haisong and said, "But if Big Brother Immortal and the family head are old friends, can you let me change jobs with my husband?" Xiaohua was stunned, but he immediately smiled and said, "I will ask Senior Kai at this time." "Thank you, Big Brother Immortal. This concubine will lead the way for Gidge." Kai Mei smiled and hurriedly accompanied Xiao Hua into the tomb. But Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "No need. Mei, you and your husband wait outside the tomb." Yes, this concubine understands. Kai Mei was very clever. She lowered her head and stayed where she was. Seeing Xiao Hua talking to Kai Mei, how could Kai Haisong ignore it? He had already asked Kai Haisong and the others who were in charge of the manor's affairs. After entering the tomb, Kai Haisong hurriedly told him about Kai Mei. After hearing Kai Haisong's detailed explanation, Xiao Hua couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. There is immortal fate in this world, but not everyone who obtains immortal fate. Many can become immortals. Humans were humans, and immortals were immortals. Why must they allow those who could not become immortals to become immortals? This is the Kai family's business. I have no right to interfere. It was no wonder that Xiao Hua sighed. That day, Xiao Hua gave Mayer a few spiritual pills and entrusted her to the Kai family. The Kai family was also honest and didn't covet those spiritual pills. Moreover, they even took Mayer into the Kai family and changed her name to Kai Mei. However, although Kai Mei was handsome, her cultivation aptitude was really limited. After dozens of years, she only cultivated to the third layer of qi refining. This wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that Kai Mei's character wasn't good. She was especially vain, or perhaps she didn't come from a good family. When she entered the Kai family, she felt an indescribable inferiority from the bottom of her heart. But what could a female cultivator do in front of these natural shortcomings? Her blind grandfather couldn't help her at all. After Kai Mei became an adult, she used her beauty to exchange for a position in the Kai family. The reason why Kai Mei and her husband were sent to guard the tomb was because they were jealous of each other's affection. Originally, they were going to be expelled from the Kai family, but this Kai Mei was also obedient. She hurriedly admitted her crime and chose to marry her current husband. This was the last chance to stay in the Kai family. This was what Xiao Hua sighed about. Not every beautiful and cute little girl would grow up to be a pretty beauty. There was also a possibility that she would grow up to be a fat ant. And the possibility was very high. However, when everyone filed in and passed through the black door, they saw many neatly repaired small tombs. In front of each tomb, there were a few faint, extremely elegant Xiaohua flowers. Moreover, in front of each tomb, there was a willow branch as thick as a little finger placed on top of the tombs. Looking at the creases under the branches, it was obvious that they were recently broken. Good, Zongbao and Xiaohua understand. Kai Haisong had just stepped into the tomb when he glanced at the tombs and explained, "Our Kai family of Liang is only a cultivation family. We are inferior to ordinary cultivation families. Even though there is a public memorial hall for the ancestors, not all of the deceased can be preserved. Therefore, almost all of the deceased are buried in the ground, just like the people of the secular world. Perhaps there is a hint of poverty." Xiaohua knew that Li Zongbao wouldn't answer, so he continued, "Earth to earth, dust to dust. Ordinary people talk about being buried in peace. This is the principle. The Kai family's actions are also normal. It can't be considered as poverty." After Kai Haisong finished his explanation, he looked at the tombs again. As far as his eyes could see, all of the tombs were as clean as before. He knew clearly that the communication talisman had just been sent out. It was impossible for Kai Mei and her husband to have made such preparations in advance. This could only mean that Kai Mei and her husband were usually very meticulous. Kai Haisong sighed. A pitiful person must have a detestable side. However, if a prodigal son returns to his old ways, I won't exchange him for a top-grade spirit stone. Senior's words are extremely true. Xiao Hua nodded. The heavenly Tao is merciful. It will always leave a glimmer of hope in a desperate situation. As long as you have the heart, you will always be able to find a way to survive. Yes. Kai Haisong was startled. Xiao Hua's words were very grand. Moreover, he didn't dare to underestimate him. After all, this was the understanding of a golden core cultivator. However, if he was asked to think deeper, he couldn't. Just as Kai Haisong was frowning in thought, Everyone had already arrived at a slightly remote corner under Kai Hisong's lead. A small drum that was no different from the one they had seen before appeared before everyone's eyes. Alas, no matter how much power and wealth one had when they were alive, when it comes to birth, old age, sickness, and death, everything is just fleeting clouds. Life can't be brought, death can't be taken away. If you can't build a tomb in the hearts of others, then you can only build a tomb in the wilderness. In this vast world, I'm afraid that there is only a few feet of space that belongs to me. When Xiao Hua saw this small tomb, he immediately thought of Kai Zhuoxia's voice and smile from before, as well as the various experiences of the two people. He couldn't help but ponder in his heart. Looking at Li Zongbao, he was also biting his lips. His body couldn't help but surge with mana. His Taoist robe fluttered in the wind, and even his clenched hands were trembling. After thinking about it for decades, now that the mystery was about to be revealed, even someone as strong as Li Zongbao couldn't help but feel agitated in his heart. It's better to let Kai Quan do it. Kai Haisong looked at the clean tomb. The tombstone in front of the tomb was still engraved with the words, "The tomb of beloved daughter Zhuoxia." He couldn't help but feel a little sad. He knew that although he and the others were Foundation establishment cultivators, if they wanted to take out Kai Zhuoxia's bluestone coffin intact, they had to let Kai Quan and the others, who were guarding the tomb, do it. No need, Junior will try. Xiao Hua waved his hand, stopping Kai Hisong's transmission. Then, without waiting for Fairy Hong Xia and the others to ask more, he made a gesture and his whole body flashed with a yellow brilliance and disappeared into the ground. 5 Elements Escape Technique? When Xiao Hua escaped from Kai Hongfeng's hands, he used the Earth Escape Talisman in front of Kai Haisong. How could Kai Haisong not be familiar with it? However, the Earth Escape Technique, which was a consummate skill for escaping before, was now nothing in the hands of Xiao Hua. Just a thought flashed through Kai Haisong's mind, and he felt the ground under his feet suddenly shake. Then he saw the small tomb quickly split open, like a flower blooming. All the soil was cut off from the tomb, and a bluestone coffin covered with dark green soil slowly rose from the ground. When Xiao Hua's figure appeared from under the bluestone coffin, Kai Haisong couldn't help but groan. This guy's strength is too great. The bluestone coffin was not too heavy, but it couldn't be buried deep. Even if Kai Haisong used his mana, he wouldn't be able to take out the coffin so easily. Xiao Hua flew to the side of the deep pit and carefully placed the bluestone coffin on the ground. However, on this bluestone coffin, the yellow talisman stuck to it had long decayed, leaving only a trace of yellow paper stuck to the black soil. When divine thought swept over it, there was no fluctuation of mana. Seeing this, Xiao Hua knew in his heart that if the coffin was Kai Zhuoxia's corpse, it must be white bones now. Immediately, Xiao Hua looked at it again, stretched out his hand, grabbed the fist-sized nail on the coffin, and pulled it out easily. More than a foot long, 8 fist-sized nails were easily pulled out by him. Just when he reached out to open the coffin, Li Zongbao's voice came. "Junior brother Xiao, let me do it personally." But Xiao Hua replied and immediately retracted his hand, standing at the side and looking at Li Zongbao. Li Zongbao took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and seemed to be calming himself down. Then he took 2 steps forward, bent down, and touched the bluestone coffin with both hands. The mana in his body surged slightly, and 2 muffled sounds were heard. It was the sound of the coffin hitting each other, and the bluestone coffin was opened a crack. The mountain peak blew past, and from the crack of the coffin, there was no stench. Xiao Hua's eyes lit up, and like everyone else, he was ecstatic. What is going on? However, when Li Zongbao opened the coffin lid and saw everything inside, he couldn't help but be surprised. Hearing Li Zongbao's shock, Fairy Hong Xia and the others also took a step forward and took a look. They couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Chapter 2993. Although it was not a skeleton lying in the coffin, it was definitely not Kai Zhuoxia's remains. Instead, it was a male cultivator whose face could not be seen clearly. However, this male cultivator had an extremely long beard and looked like an old man. Ouch! Xiao Hua saw it clearly and immediately exclaimed, because he saw that this male cultivator was wearing a slightly rotten robe from the Imperial Thunder sect. "Senior Brotherly, please have mercy, this is Qian Qinghua." Qian Qinghua is a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Qian Qinghua? Li Zongbao's spiritual power surged. When he heard Fairy Hong Xia and the others' surprise, he knew that this person was not a disciple of the Kai family. He was already angry and wanted to destroy this person. However, after hearing Xiao Hua's words, he noticed that Qian Qinghua was wearing the Imperial Thunder sect's robe. Then Li Zongbao snorted and shook his hand. When his spiritual power reached out, the blue stone lid immediately turned into powder and fell on Qian Qinghua's body layer by layer. Xiao Hua did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly took out the token that Qian Qinghua gave him and shook his hand. Sure enough, the token hovered in the air a few times and suddenly fell into the coffin. Alas! Xiao Hua confirmed Qian Qinghua's identity and smiled bitterly. The Imperial Thunder sect had spent a lot of effort and time to find Qian Qinghua, but no one expected that Qian Qinghua would run into Kai Zhuoxia's coffin. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua was shocked again. He hurriedly stretched out his hand and immediately pulled Qian Qinghua out of the coffin. Fortunately, there was only Qian Qinghua and no trace of Kai Zhuoxia. At this moment, Xiao Hua was relieved and thought to himself, "Fortunately, if this guy stayed in the coffin with Kai Zhuoxia for dozens of years, even if Senior Brother Li did not say anything, the Kai family would not let this guy go. This guy has some karma with me, which makes things difficult for me." After thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua said, "Senior Kai, this guy is a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. I will take him away." Seeing that Xiao Hua recognized Qian Qinghua, Kai Haisong suddenly remembered that when Xiao Hua just left the Kai family, Shanghua sect's disciples came to visit him. How could he not know the danger? He hurriedly nodded and said, "Nephew, everything is up to you. I don't know anything." Xiao Hua shook his hand and put the Qian green flame back into the soul nest. Then, he looked at the ground that he had just dug up and complained in his heart. If Qian Qinghua was in Kai Zhuoxia's coffin, then where did Kai Zhuoxia go? Qian Qinghua would never move Kai Zhuoxia into another coffin. Then, Kai Zhuoxia must be near the green stone coffin. He only cared about taking out the coffin and didn't pay attention to the bones nearby. Even if Kai Zhuoxia's corpse was intact, his reckless action just now might have caused some damage to Kai Zhuoxia's corpse. "Junior will go down and take a look." Xiao Hua sighed. He looked at Fairy Hong Xia, whose face was also not good, and said to Kai Haisong, "Then?" Kai Haisong reflexively nodded his head. Xiao Hua, this son-in-law, was really too capable. All he could do was nod his head. When Xiao Hua entered the ground, everyone's gaze was fixed on the ground, quietly waiting for the result. In less than half a cup of tea's time, Xiao Hua's figure escaped from the wall of the pit. However, when everyone saw Xiao Hua's empty hands, their hearts turned cold. Li Zongbao's heart was even more empty. It was as if his heart had been hollowed out and there was no trace of it. "Junior found it." Xiao Hua's figure flew out and hurriedly shouted. Then, he waved his hand and took out a crystal coffin and placed it in front of Li Zongbao. Then, under Li Zongbao's eyes, he carefully took out a corpse covered in mud from the soul nest. Although the corpse was covered in mud, the face had been simply wiped away, revealing a face that was similar to Fairy Hong Xia's. The thin eyebrows and long eyelashes were still there. It looked like she was still in a deep sleep when she was just placed in the coffin. "Sister," Fairy Hong Xia couldn't help but call out. Xiao Hua awkwardly reached out his hand and took out a stick of mud. "This is Zhuoxia's right arm." "Junior." "Junior?" Before Kai Haisong could say anything, Li Zongbao, who had been staring at Kai Zhuoxia's face, saw Kai Zhuoxia's severed arm and couldn't help but stretch his neck and howl. Not only was his howl filled with sorrow, it was also filled with surprise and even deep anticipation. Xiao Hua and Fairy Hong Xia didn't feel anything, but Kai Haisong and the rest were pale. They hurriedly covered their ears and crouched down, as if they couldn't resist the power of Li Zongbao's howl. Xiao Hua frowned slightly. Just as he was about to activate his magic power to protect everyone, Li Zongbao's body suddenly flashed with brilliance. His magic power rippled out like overflowing boiling water. At the same time, a strong pressure was generated from Li Zongbao's head and rushed straight to the sky. The wind and clouds in the sky changed rapidly and countless black clouds surged. Looking at the surroundings, a huge amount of heaven and earth spiritual energy rushed over crazily. Bits of crystals appeared nearby. Li Zongbao has condensed his core. Xiao Hua came to a realization. He knew that the reason why Li Zongbao couldn't condense his core was because of Kai Zhuoxia. Today, when he saw Kai Zhuoxia's corpse, although he didn't know if she was alive or dead, he was overjoyed after seeing her corpse. The damage to her corpse made him feel sad. In between joy and sadness, he suddenly realized something and achieved the opportunity to condense his golden core. Xiao Hua was overjoyed. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Li Zongbao's neck amidst the heavenly pressure of condensing his core. Then, without caring about the taboo of the Kai family's burial mound, lightning flashed around him and he rushed up Yang Cauldron Mountain like a thunderbolt. Although Li Zongbao went, the pressure from Yang Cauldron Mountain enveloped Luyang's Kai family and a small part of Luyang for more than 20 days. Although it was only a few weeks, the entire Luyang town was in complete chaos. Not to mention the specks of crystals that were strangely suspended in midair and were more crystalline than common snowflakes, and not to mention the hurricane formed by the heaven and earth spiritual energy that blew everything away. Just the pressure of Li Zongbao's golden core was enough to throw the entire secular world into chaos. In a corner of Luyang near Yang Cauldron Mountain, within a range of about 3 to 5 miles, all animals, humans, and beasts were paralyzed on the ground. None of them could move. Within this range, everyone's hearts were more or less under an incomparable pressure. The feeling of being unable to control life and death filled their minds. Although it was only 2 days later, Xiao Hua, who had come to his senses, hurriedly flew down from Yang Cauldron Mountain and quickly moved the secular people away from Li Zongbao's pressure. However, the impact was huge. Not to mention people who understood the true meaning of life in the midst of life and death. Couples who had broken up with each other were reunited. Not to mention unfilial children who woke up to filial piety under the heavy burden and turned over a new leaf. Not to mention the rascals in Liang who thought that the gods had descended and turned over a new leaf. Many young children were born with the Tao. It was also a huge change in their lives. Fortunately, the range of Li Zongbao's divine sense was only 20 to 30 miles and he was condensing his core on Yang Cauldron Mountain. His divine sense only covered a small corner of Luyang. If Xiao Hua had condensed his core, the entire Luyang town would have been covered. The secular people would have nowhere to run even if they wanted to. After Xiao Hua moved the secular people who were affected by the divine sense to a safe place, he sighed. Damn it, no wonder cultivators have to advance in places where there are few people. It's not only because the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is abundant there, but also because it doesn't affect others. Then, Xiao Hua hurried back to the Kai family. Although the secular people were affected by Li Zongbao's pressure, they did not need to cultivate after all. Their Tao hearts and Tao foundations would not be affected. However, most of the disciples of the Kai family were cultivators. It was inevitable that their cultivation would be damaged after being under the pressure of a golden core cultivator for a long time. Sure enough, when Xiao Hua entered the Kai family, other than Fairy Hong Xia, who was in a slightly better condition, Kai Haisong and the other foundation establishment cultivators were scattered in the spirit tomb. It was as if they had not moved at all after Xiao Hua left with Li Zongbao. Xiao Hua asked Fairy Hong Xia briefly and immediately flew to the largest meeting hall in the Kai family. Not only did he activate the array formation of the meeting hall, he also set down the jade talismans of the capital star array. Kai Haisong and the rest, as well as the disciples of the Kai family who were paralyzed, were sent into the meeting hall. After doing all this, Xiao Hua saw that there was nothing left behind. Then, he returned to the Yang Cauldron Mountain to guard Li Zongbao's core condensation. On the 30th day, the oppressive pressure that made it hard for people to breathe slowly weakened. The crystal bead that had been floating dozens of miles away was thrown into the thick whirlpool under the black clouds above the Yang Cauldron Mountain. Seeing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth condense into a whirlpool above Li Zongbao's head, Xiao Hua secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He knew that Li Zongbao had no problems condensing his core condensation. However, he immediately had the urge to jump up and curse. Damn it, why is it so difficult for me to condense my core condensation? Not only do I need dozens of times more spiritual energy of heaven and earth than Li Zongbao, there's also a lightning tribulation. There are actually 3 lightning tribulations. How can I live like this? After cursing, Xiaohua released his Buddhist perception to see that Kai Jia and Lu Yang were gradually recovering. He immediately closed his eyes to meditate. After all, everyone's core condensation was different. The celestial phenomena were also different. The heavenly Tao revealed was also different. Xiaohua was fated to see Li Zongbao condense his core condensation, so he could see the wonders of the parting love treasure mirror and the ruthlessness of the heavenly Tao. After dozens of days, the dark clouds that had been pressing down on the Yang Cauldron Mountain slowly dissipated. A ray of sunlight that was like a sharp sword shot out from the clouds and shone on Li Zongbao's body. His snow-white hair refracted bits of golden light, and an indescribable power was emitted from his body. Li Zongbao slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were completely pale, and there was no trace of black in them. A kind of coldness, mercilessness, and austere aura emerged from his pale eyes, causing one's heart to turn cold. In just a few breaths, a little blackness was born in this paleness. It was like the rare moonlight in the night sky, and it immediately dispelled the desolation. Gradually, the emotions of joy, anger, sorrow, and joy slowly appeared along with the appearance of the black pupils. Chapter 2994. Senior Brotherly? Xiaohua saw Li Zongbao the moment he opened his eyes. He could clearly see the ruthlessness in Li Zongbao's eyes. At this moment he slowly got up and walked over. Xiaohua, Li Zongbao glanced at Xiaohua. His eyes were as sharp as lightning. The first thing he said was, "Is Zhuxia dead or alive?" "I'll let Senior Brotherly know." Xiaohua smiled bitterly. "Once you release your aura of condensing your core, other than me, who else can move? I'm here to protect you. I really don't know if Kai Zhuxia is dead or alive." Li Zongbao snorted and released his spiritual sense. Without calling Xiaohua, he flew down from the Yang Cauldron Mountain. Xiaohua smacked his lips and looked at the unfamiliar back of Li Zongbao. He shook his head and flew down as well. At this moment, the Kai family had already returned to its original order. However, every disciple who saw Li Zongbao had a face full of respect and fear. They all stood far away and avoided him. In the meeting hall, beside a crystal coffin stood Fairy Hong Xia and the rest. "Is Zhuxia dead or alive?" Li Zongbao entered the meeting hall and asked. "Senior Brotherly." Fairy Hong Xia and the rest turned around and bowed. "Congratulations on condensing your core, Senior Brother." Unexpectedly, Li Zongbao did not answer. He walked towards the crystal coffin expressionlessly. Walking to the front of the transparent crystal coffin, Li Zongbao saw Kai Zhuxia's beautiful sleeping face, as well as her long eyelashes and long hair that almost covered her entire body. Only then did a trace of a smile appear on Li Zongbao's face. Moreover, his eyes were filled with warmth as he muttered to himself, "Zhuxia, you are actually so beautiful. But you're still modest in front of me. Sigh, I don't want cold beauty. I only want living ugliness." However, Li Zongbao pushed his hand and was about to lift the lid of the crystal coffin. But at this moment, Xiaohua's slender hand reached out and pressed on the coffin. He said calmly, "Senior Brotherly, wait a moment. Let Hong Xiao explain." Li Zongbao did not stop. However, he did not lift the lid. Only then did he stop. He turned around and looked at Fairy Hong Xia. "Senior Brotherly." Faced with Li Zongbao's cold gaze, Fairy Hong Xia's heart skipped a beat. She hurriedly said, "I've already checked. Elder sister hasn't been revived. Not only is there no heartbeat or breathing, even his body is cold." "That is." A cold light flashed in Li Zongbao's eyes. The people around him trembled. "No." Kai Haisong hurriedly said, "Fellow Taoist Li, although Zhuxia did not come back to life, but she is not dead either." But Li Zongbao stared straight at Kai Haisong, his gaze as sharp as a sword. Kai Haisong suppressed his shock and said, Zhuoxia's skin color is normal, and her hair is still growing. If she's already dead, not to mention other things, her hair must have withered and her body must have perished. Then is she dead or alive? Li Zongbao asked coldly. No one dared to answer. As far as this Xiao knows. Xiao Hua indifferently said, Kai Zhuoxia is neither alive nor dead. He seems to be in a very strange state. So, congratulations, senior brother Li. At least Kai Zhuoxia is not dead. Her body is still here, and her body is also intact. Even her soul is not in the netherworld. Her resurrection should be easier than Ziyi. Of course, Kai Zhuoxia's right arm is this Xiao's fault. This Xiao will return her an intact arm after she comes back to life. Li Zongbao glanced at Xiao Hua indifferently, then turned to look at the crystal coffin and asked in a low voice, What is going on with this crystal coffin? Senior brother Li, this crystal coffin originally belonged to Jin Quan Shan Tu Hong. Xiao Hua replied in a low voice. Li Zongbao's eyebrows twitched as if he thought of something. Also, Senior Kai, bring everyone out for a moment. This Xiao wants to check on Kai Zhuoxia's situation again. Xiao Hua turned his head and ordered. Kai Haisong was slightly stunned, but Fairy Hong Xia was overjoyed and hurriedly said, Okay, we will leave now. Senior brother Li, you go out, too. Xiao Hua said indifferently. This Xiao will not leave. Li Zongbao shook his head. From now on, this Xiao will not be separated from Zhuoxia. Xiao Hua urged his magic power to restrain Li Zongbao, but he immediately withdrew his magic power and said indifferently, If you want Kai Zhuoxia to come back to life, you should hurry up and leave. Li Zongbao suddenly raised his head and stared at Xiao Hua for a moment. Xiao Hua was not afraid and directly faced him. What a joke, not to mention that Li Zongbao had just condensed his core, even if he was in the late stage of gold core. In Xiao Hua's eyes, he was just a gold core. Seeing that Xiao Hua did not shrink back, Li Zongbao hesitated slightly and was the last to walk out of the meeting hall. Then Xiao Hua made a grabbing motion, and the capital star array of the meeting hall was activated. In the entire hall, only Xiao Hua and the crystal coffin were left. Sigh, fellow Kai. Years have passed since we parted, and now we are once again on different paths. Xiao Hua walked to the front of the crystal coffin and stared at Kai Zhuoxia's lifelike face. He whispered, This Xiao knows that you may still have a chance to live, but this Xiao really does not know where this chance comes from. However, since the one who tied the bell should untie it, then this Xiao can try his best. After saying that, Xiao Hua reached out and opened the crystal coffin. He stretched out his thumb and middle finger and placed it on Kai Zhuoxia's left wrist. He closed his eyes, and after a moment he slightly frowned and released a strand of soul thread, which very cautiously landed between Kai Zhuoxia's eyebrows. Siege, when Xiao Hua's soul thread rushed into Kai Zhuoxia's soul, he saw the situation of the mysterious dark cloud and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He saw that Kai Zhuoxia's mysterious dark cloud was already in pieces, as if she had died long ago. But the strange thing was that the mysterious dark cloud was now wrapped in a faint layer of water. This water was sparkling and translucent, flashing with a faint unknown brilliance. It flowed very slowly outside the mysterious dark cloud. The scattered and mysterious dark clouds seemed to be condensed by this water bloom. This water, is it the effect of that willow branch? Xiao Hua was somewhat baffled. That strand of soul thread gradually approached the water. Boom, a loud sound rang out. That soul thread had just touched the water when it exploded in Xiao Hua's soul, and a kind of boundless and desolate feeling emerged from Xiao Hua's soul. A seemingly boundless netherworld sea appeared in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. There were countless corpses in the sea, and waves of blood soared to the sky. From time to time, there were strange, huge, and ugly netherworld beasts rushing out of the sea, swallowing hundreds and thousands of corpses in one gulp. Boundless, without end, without a boat, without a bridge, I cannot cross it. A kind of indescribable pain emerged from Xiao Hua's heart, and a kind of feeling of absolute powerlessness filled Xiao Hua's body at the same time. Suddenly, there seemed to be a kind of Sanskrit sound, and also seemed to be a kind of golden rune, and there was a slight feeling of armor inscriptions. A three-colored brilliance pierced through the sea of bitterness, rushing to the other side of the sea of bitterness. However, that three-colored bridge had just appeared when a wave of blood struck. Xiaohua's soul thread was shattered, and all of his feelings disappeared in an instant. Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. His back was covered in a layer of cold sweat, and he didn't dare to extend that second strand of soul thread. Taking out the willow branch, Xiaohua's divine sense, Buddhist sense, and even soul sense probed, but they were all empty. Even where the soul thread fell, it still couldn't wrap around. When Xiaohua opened his Dharma eyes, in those already somewhat transformed Dharma eyes, there was a three-colored rainbow bridge in Xiaohua's hand. Sure enough, it's this thing that's causing trouble. Xiaohua understood. Unfortunately, he still waved it several times on Kai Zhuoxia's corpse, but the willow branch didn't move at all. Of course, Kai Zhuoxia's corpse also didn't change. Xiaohua scratched his ears and cheeks. He clearly knew that this thing would work, but he just didn't know how to use it. Forget it, I'm afraid the opportunity hasn't come yet. Xiaohua was dejected. He was only a golden core cultivator, and his soul cultivation had just reached Mingruyan. He was still too far away from being able to see through life and death. Thinking about this, Xiaohua was about to put the willow branch into his space, but at this moment he hesitated. He thought of the previous water bloom, thought of the Sanskrit sound and the netherworld sea within the water bloom, and flipped his hand, sending the willow branch into the Buddha Sarira. It really did fall into the clear water bottle. Swish, a faint Buddhist light emerged from the Buddha Sarira, and the entire clear water bottle slightly swelled. The willow branch in the clear water bottle suddenly gained a layer of holiness. This willow branch is a Buddhist artifact? Xiaohua suddenly realized. Xiaohua opened the capital star formation, and Li Zongbao was guarding the entrance. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't look happy, he didn't ask anything and quickly rushed to the crystal coffin. How is it? Fairy Hong Xia was the second to come over and asked in a low voice. Sigh, Zhuoxia really didn't die. But it's still very difficult to resurrect her. With my current cultivation, I can't do anything. Xiaohua sighed, and with a grab, he was about to take out the capital star formation's jade talisman. Fairy Hong Xia snorted coldly, turned around and walked over. Xiaohua was stunned, but soon understood. After thinking for a while, he took out a blank jade talisman and recorded the method to use the capital star formation. He quickly chased after her, and with a smile as if he was presenting a treasure, he said, Hong Xia, why are you giving it to me? I don't want it. Fairy Hong Xia glared at him unhappily. Hee, Xiaohua laughed. I've already given you what I gave you. This is what you gave me. Who are the two of us? Fairy Hong Xia was originally worried about Kai Zhuoxia's life, but when she saw Xiaohua's expression, she knew that she would be fine. Only then did she glance at him and take the jade talisman. Kai Haisong naturally followed beside the two of them, but Kai Haisong's eyes were only looking ahead. It wasn't clear if he didn't see them, or if he was only concerned about Kai Zhuoxia. Xiaohua, what should we do now? Everyone walked in front of the crystal coffin and took a look. Kai Haisong turned around and asked Xiaohua. There's nothing else, we can only wait. Xiaohua pointed at Kai Zhuoxia and said, at this moment, she's neither dead nor alive, and her lifespan is very long. I'm afraid that you and I can't compare to her. Once the opportunity comes, she can be resurrected. The Kai family only needs to protect her body. Chapter 2995. How can I let the Kai family keep Zhuoxia's body? Without waiting for Kai Haisong to speak, Li Zongbao reached out his hand and lifted the crystal coffin. Unfortunately, just as his hand touched the coffin, Xiaohua also reached out his hand. The crystal coffin seemed to be cast from copper and iron and could no longer be lifted from the stone table. Senior brother Li, Xiaohua said indifferently, this matter still needs to be discussed with the head of the Kai family. Li Zongbao coldly glanced at Xiaohua's finger on the crystal coffin and actually raised his head to look at Xiaohua's face. His eyes were no longer like before, only cold and black. Xiaohua's eyes narrowed. Just like before, he faced the increasingly cold gaze. He knew that Li Zongbao's mind was already damaged. Now that he saw the half-dead Kai Zhuoxia, not only did the parting treasured mirror suffer a backlash, even the weapon spirit of the immortal slaughtering whip suffered a backlash. Especially now that Li Zongbao had just stepped into the core formation realm, his realm was not stable yet. The feeling of power in his palm had yet to fade from Li Zongbao's heart. He really might not be afraid to fight with him. Zongbao, Kai Haisong's mind raced. He turned to look at Fairy Hong Xia, Kai Hesong and the rest. They exchanged glances and secretly nodded. He hurriedly shouted, "Although Zhuoxia is my beloved daughter, she suffered grievances in my Kai family. Even after death, her corpse was humiliated by others. My Kai family feels that we are not worthy of keeping Zhuoxia's corpse. If Zongbao is willing, you can take it away. However, I ask Zongbao to be considerate. By any chance, please send Zhuoxia back to my Luyang Kai family. At the very least, she still has her ancestors and us to accompany her." And Li Zongbao responded indifferently, not even nodding his head. Hearing Kai Haisong's words, Xiaohua gently removed his 2 fingers from the crystal coffin. Li Zongbao reached out and took out a storage pouch, wanting to put it in. Unfortunately, although Kai Zhuoxia was half dead, her soul was strangely well. How could he put it in the storage pouch? Xiaohua sighed and took out a spirit storage pouch and handed it over. Li Zongbao did not raise his head. He kept the crystal coffin and thought for a moment. He stretched out his hand and said to Xiaohua, "Give me the jade scroll that Jing Apple Village Elder Ji Lan gave you." Xiaohua was stunned and asked curiously, "When did Ji Lan give me a jade scroll?" "It was used in the records of soul cultivators." Li Zongbao replied indifferently. "I've heard him say that it recorded the location where a Dao sect senior had fallen." "Oh, that's a soul cultivator's bone." Xiaohua suddenly understood that Elder Ji Lan had mentioned an extremely dangerous place. "What do you want that for? You don't cultivate your soul, so how can you understand?" "I don't understand, but you do." Li Zongbao said resolutely, "Even if I have to break through millions of Meng mountains, travel through the 3 kingdoms of immortal cultivators, chase up to the 9th heaven, and descend to the 9th hell, I will find a way to resurrect Zhuoxia. That dangerous place is indeed located in the depths of millions of Meng mountains. I'm determined to explore it." Ah, Xiaohua instantly felt that Li Zongbao's figure was incomparably tall. He understood that with the foundation of the Utopia faction, Li Zongbao could cultivate to the nascent soul stage or even the separating spirit stage without any suspense. However, Li Zongbao also understood that relying on the inheritance of the Utopia faction alone was not enough to resurrect a dead person. He could only learn from others' strong points and search for thousands of families. That was why he decided to go to millions of Meng mountains. "Senior brother Li, the millions of Meng mountains that we went to was only a corner of the real Meng mountains. Moreover, we were protected by Ziming and Xiao Mao, so we returned safely." What Elder Ji Lan said? "I'm afraid that the so-called depths of Wu Meng mountains are rarely entered by ordinary Dao sect cultivators. If you rashly go in, give it to me." Li Zongbao did not listen to his advice at all and said coldly. Xiaohua was not satisfied and insisted, "As for Kai Zhuoxia, I naturally don't have a way to resurrect her now, but I'm completely confident that I can resurrect her in the future. You don't need to find a way to resurrect her by yourselves." Fairy Hong Xia was still fine, but when Kai Haisong and the others heard this, they turned pale with fright. Controlling life and death, that was a great magical power that even immortals did not dare to boast about. Xiaohua was only a golden core cultivator now, but he dared to say such a big thing. Who would not be shocked after hearing this? "Give it to me," Li Zongbao said again. Xiaohua looked at Li Zongbao and narrowed his eyes again, as if he was thinking about something. However, after a while, he reached out his hand and took out the grayish bone. He used his soul consciousness to explore it, and then recorded the things inside in a jade slip and handed it to Li Zongbao. Li Zongbao took it and used his soul consciousness to take a look. Then, he carefully put the jade slip away and activated his magic power, flying out of the meeting hall. "Senior brother Li, where are you going? The Utopia faction or the millions of Meng mountains?" Xiao Hua hurriedly shouted and chased after him. Roar! A mournful howl suddenly sounded from the side of Yang Cauldron Mountain, and a heroic and sorrowful singing voice came from the sky. My heart is in my chest, where is thy heart? Thy heart is not in heaven and earth, my heart is lonely, so what if it is in my chest? Thy heart is in the 9 heavens, my heart becomes an immortal, thy heart is in the 9 underworlds, my heart is in the devil. My heart wants to be one with thy heart, the ends of the world can't help, my heart wants to sleep with thy heart, gods and demons kill. As the voice faded away, Li Zongbao's lonely figure also gradually disappeared. Xiao Hua could certainly catch up with Li Zongbao, but how could he catch up with Li Zongbao's infatuation? Although elder sister's life was short, she met such a lover. Even if elder sister is in the 9 underworlds, her heart will be at ease. She didn't live her life in vain. Fairy Hong Xia and the others chased after him and also looked at the sky, murmuring, how many female cultivators in this world have such good fortune? Hong Xia, do you think senior brother Li will return to the Utopia faction or the millions of Meng Mountains? Xiao Hua slightly bit his lips and whispered. Is this important? Fairy Hong Xia asked. With elder sister's company, senior brother Li will no longer be lonely in this world. Sighs. Xiao Hua sighs in his heart and reaches out to grab Fairy Hong Xia's hand. Unfortunately, he grabs nothing but air. Fairy Hong Xia dodges Xiao Hua and says to Kai Haisong, Father, you must keep elder sister's matter and Xiao Hua's matter a secret. These are all important matters. If a trace of it is leaked, the Kai family of Liang will be in unprecedented danger. Then, Fairy Hong Xia passed the jade slip with the capital star array to Kai Haisong and said, also, the array outside the Kai family is too clumsy. Only the array in the meeting hall is the real defensive array. If you encounter any danger, you can hide in it. This is the way to control it. Great. Kai Haisong was overjoyed. He knew the power of the capital star array very well. It was a divine array that could resist the power of the core formation stage. I don't dare to delay any longer. The war is about to end. I have to rush back to the Huanhua sect. Fairy Hong Xia bowed, turned around and flew into the sky. It can't be? Xiao Hua, who was standing at the side, was dumbfounded. He did not expect that Fairy Hong Xia would actually leave just like Li Zongbao. After a slight hesitation, he hurriedly bowed towards Kai Haisong and the rest, before his figure shot up into the air. However, after flying for several dozen feet, Xiao Hua stopped again. With a flick of his wrist, he took out a storage pouch and tossed it to Kai Haisong. Senior Xiao, these are some rice seeds. You can distribute them or sell them to all parts of the country of Xi. However, if there is a barren place, you still have to give them away. You can't accept spirit stones. In addition, the Kai family must compensate for the places in Luoyang that were damaged by senior brother Li. The required silver and other items can be deducted from the rice seeds. Kai Haisong saw the storage bag fall and was really puzzled. He didn't know how to deal with it. A cultivator who cared about the secular world. This was the first time he met someone like that. Even though Fairy Hong Xia ran fast, could she hide from Xiao Hua? Similarly, they were flying towards the teleportation array of Linyu Town. In less than half a cup of tea's time, Fairy Hong Xia's graceful and seductive figure appeared in Xiao Hua's vision. Looking at this familiar figure, Xiao Hua's heart was burning with passion. Xiao Hua's harvest from the millions of Meng Mountains was bountiful, far beyond his imagination. However, along the way, with Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao accompanying him, the sweet journey in Xiao Hua's heart was completely over. Now that he finally had a chance to be alone with Fairy Hong Xia, and they weren't in Liang, how could Xiao Hua not be distracted? Therefore, Xiao Hua didn't fly too fast and just followed behind Fairy Hong Xia. Seeing that the sky was dark and they were in the wilderness, Xiao Hua activated the transcendence energy in his body and pounced towards Fairy Hong Xia like a flying wolf. When Xiao Hua hugged Fairy Hong Xia, a kind of thirst arose from the bottom of Xiao Hua's heart. Xiao Hua lowered his voice and growled, "Stop, you're a bandit." After saying that, Xiao Hua carried Fairy Hong Xia's body and flew towards the place he had set his sights on. If it was someone else, Fairy Hongxia would definitely struggle and even blame Xiaohua. But this time, no matter how Xiaohua's tongue licked the edge of Fairy Hongxia's earlobe, she didn't have any reaction. Sensing the abnormality of Fairy Hongxia, and feeling that although Fairy Hongxia's body was still warm in his embrace, it wasn't as hot as before. Xiaohua's heart turned cold and his body stiffened unconsciously. He asked in a low voice, "Wife? Since when have I been your wife?" Fairy Hongxia asked indifferently, "Wife, what do you mean?" Xiaohua felt that something was wrong. "Aren't you my wife? Why didn't you say this in front of Senior Marshal Brother Li and Junior Marshal Brother Xiao?" Fairy Hongxia didn't turn her head, she just looked at the darkness in the distance and asked faintly. Xiaohua gently turned Fairy Hongxia's body over. Looking at Fairy Hongxia's teary eyes, he said seriously, "It's not that I don't want to say it, it's just that you and I haven't done the dual cultivation ceremony yet. If I call you that, won't it tarnish your reputation?" Calling me wifey would tarnish my reputation. Then, wouldn't you tarnish my reputation even more by hugging me and doing something lewd with me? Fairy Hongxia sneered coldly. Xiaohua was speechless. The hand that was hugging Fairy Hongxia slipped unconsciously. Fairy Hongxia's heart seemed to have turned cold along with that hand. Chapter 2996. You only care about your momentary happiness. When have you ever thought about me? Fairy Hongxia continued, "You have a junior sister, a close friend, and a disciple. How are you going to treat me?" "My wife." Xiaohua was truly speechless. He did not expect that after so many days, Fairy Hongxia's rebound would be so severe. "Before the dual cultivation ceremony, it's better for you to call me junior sister Hongxia." Fairy Hongxia said indifferently, "I know what you're thinking. Naturally, I can do as you wish. However, today is the last day. I'm afraid we don't have any more chances. The past may have been sweet, today may be bitter, but all of this will slowly dissipate with the night." "What do you mean?" The fire in Xiaohua's heart was completely extinguished. "Not much." Fairy Hongxia stroked her hair and said faintly, "For my dead sister, Senior Brother Li did not get to know a single female cultivator for dozens of years. He is known as the #1 person below Goldcore. The number of female cultivators who want to dual cultivate with him is probably more than the number of junior sisters you know, right? However, he has never even looked at them properly. Today, for the sake of my sister's resurrection, he actually abandoned his sect and rushed to the Meng Mountains alone. Such a person with such deep affection is rarely seen in the world. Xiaohua, I will not ask you to be like Senior Brother Li, to not look at others for my sake. However, I beg you, please consider my feelings. Don't get to know more female cultivators. I really do not have the slightest bit of confidence or dignity under these meaningless challenges." As Fairy Hongxia spoke, her tears flowed down in droplets. Xiaohua did not expect that he would hurt Fairy Hongxia so much. For a moment, he did not know what to say. "Do you know junior sister Mingyue from my Huanhua sect?" "Mingyue? I don't know." Xiaohua shook his head slightly. "No impression? What does she have to do with me?" "Junior sister Mingyue has deep feelings for Nameless. If she knows that you are Nameless, I'm afraid she will become another good junior sister of yours." Fairy Hongxia said sadly, "Although I am open-minded, how can I allow a junior sister to be my junior sister? How can she watch her lover and her martial aunt dual cultivate together?" See, Xiaohua finally understood. He finally understood why Fairy Hongxia was so conflicted about how many female cultivators she knew. Red Cloud, Xiaohua raised his hand and said, "This Xiao hereby swears a blood oath. Apart from you and Shui, no." Fairy Hongxia shook her head slightly and stopped Xiaohua. "The so-called blood oath is nothing but a void. This concubine is not willing to use this blood oath to bind you. This concubine only wants your one and only love for this concubine, as long as your true heart. How can the blood oath related to cultivation see your true nature?" "Then, what do you think we should do?" Xiaohua was completely out of ideas. "Xiaolang, Fairy Hong Xia opened her teary eyes and looked at Xiao Hua. She said word by word, "Our relationship has progressed too quickly. Although we were in love with each other and fell in love at first sight, in reality, the time we spent together was very short. Our relationship might not be solid, and it might even be maintained in the joy of dual cultivation. Therefore, this concubine feels that you and I should separate for a period of time. Both of us should calm down and think about each other's thoughts. Of course, don't worry, Xiao Lang. Even if you don't want this concubine will not look at anyone else in this lifetime. However, if this concubine can see clearly, then this concubine will definitely not stay by your side. This concubine has her own proud and aloof heart." Huff, Xiao Hua let out a deep breath. He had finally encountered his first relationship problem in this lifetime. Based on what Fairy Hong Xia said, if he couldn't solve it well, she wouldn't be with him in the future. Moreover, after the Great War of Sword and Tao, the three kingdoms of cultivators will be defeated. The cultivation sects of the three kingdoms will definitely be in chaos. The structure of each sect will have to be reorganized. One after another, handsome cultivators will spring up like bamboo shoots after the rain. Xiao Hua, although you are blessed by the heavens, there will always be someone better than you. There are many people who are more outstanding than you, who are more favored by the heavens than you. You should comprehend what you have learned from the millions of Meng Mountains and take a step further. You should step into the realm of nascent soul grandmaster as soon as possible. Fairy Hong Xia continued, "This concubine has also obtained the inheritance of the phoenix. The reason why this concubine didn't reveal it in front of the Qing Yang's Kai family head, nor did I tell father, was because I wanted to comprehend it quietly and fully accept the inheritance of the phoenix. When the storm suddenly rises in the future, this concubine will be able to stand on high and turn the tide. Perhaps, this is an opportunity for you and me to cultivate on our own. This concubine seems to remember that you once said, 'It's better to forget each other in the pugilistic world than to help each other in times of need.' Perhaps only when we are far away from each other can we see each other's needs, each other's love, and each other's sincerity." "I understand." Xiao Hua took a deep breath. He felt his nose turning sour. He reached out and hugged Fairy Hong Xia again. He whispered, "This Xiao will do as you say. This Xiao will let you see this Xiao's heart for you. This Xiao will also let you know that this Xiao is the heavens beyond the heavens. This Xiao is an outsider. In this Xiaoyu continent, only Xiao Hua is supreme." As he spoke, Xiao Hua stretched out his lips and gently kissed Fairy Hong Xia's forehead, eyes, ears, nose, cheeks, and chin. Finally, he heavily kissed her sweet lips. When he deeply tasted the bitter tears on her lips, he decisively left. With a long roar, he rushed into the sky. Lightning flashed around his body. With a rumbling sound, he rushed towards the distant Linyu town. Xiao Hua. Seeing Xiao Hua turn into lightning and fly away, Fairy Hong Xia's heart suddenly became empty. Empty like nothingness. Empty like there was no falling. Empty like the pitch-black night. Suddenly, a kind of sadness welled up in Fairy Hong Xia's heart. Her tears involuntarily fell, drowning the entire night. Coming out from the last transfer array, Xiao Hua's heart still felt like a huge rock was pressing down on it. Although he left Fairy Hong Xia in a very carefree manner and said those bold words, and although he knew Fairy Hong Xia's bitterness in his heart, he really did not understand Fairy Hong Xia's thoughts. He, Huang Mingxiang, Ziming, Jiu Xia, and even himself did not know about Mingyu's matter. Why did he give Fairy Hong Xia so much pressure? He also never thought of dual cultivation with these female cultivators. Saying a few words, walking a few steps with them, what's the point? Even if it's just holding hands, what's the point? Ziming might not even be able to see him in the future. Consoling him, what's the point? And all these, Xue seems to have never said anything about it, right? Forget it. Xiao Hua looked at the deathly pale clear sky. The wisps of faint clouds seemed to also carry a bitter expression. He couldn't help but smile bitterly and say, perhaps Red Cloud was right, only time and distance can test one's heart. After sorting out his emotions, Xiaohua was just about to fly up when a faintly discernible divine sense strangely swept over. Who is it? Xiaohua sneered. His soul pierced out following the divine sense. Ioyo! An extremely exaggerated cry came from the sky. At the same time, a figure appeared. That figure was hugging his head with his hands, appearing to be in extreme pain. Second senior brother. You're really like a ghost that won't disperse. Wherever this Xiao goes, you'll find me. Xiaohua glanced at him, seemingly unmoved, and said indifferently. That person was naturally the heavenly demon sex Zhang Qingxiao. When Zhang Qingxiao heard Xiaohua's words, he released his hands in astonishment and asked curiously, "Who provoked our imperial thunder sex nameless? Do you not want your head anymore?" "No one provoked me." Xiaohua also said indifferently, "Why are you looking for me?" If no one provoked you, then you must have eaten a fireball talisman." Zhang Qingxiao pointed at him and said, "Look at your face. It's as if everyone in the country of Shi owes you 3 low-grade spirit stones." "If there's nothing else, I'm leaving." Xiaohua urged his magic power, as if he was really going to leave. Didn't someone say that he wanted a nascent soul cultivation method? I worked so hard and racked my brains to get it, but he doesn't want it. What a disappointment. Zhang Qingxiao didn't stop him. She only said one sentence, and Xiaohua obediently stopped. "Give it to me." Xiaohua still weakly stretched out his hand. "Don't." Zhang Qingxiao smiled and said, "First, let me see Lu. We'll talk about the rest later." And Xiaohua knew that Zhang Qingxiao and Xiao Xinrui were both concerned. He didn't dare to neglect and took Jiang Lu out of the space. Seeing that Jiang Lu still hadn't changed, Zhang Qingxiao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Little junior brother, didn't you promise to wake Lu up? How many years has it been? Why hasn't there been any news?" It's not that I don't want to help," Xiaohua said helplessly. "That expert doesn't have time now. We can only wait until after the Path Sword battle." Speaking of this, Xiaohua's heart moved, and he asked, "Oh right, did Sky Patrol City really fall into the hands of sword cultivators? What's the situation now?" "This has nothing to do with you." Zhang Qingxiao waved her hand and looked at Jiang Lu with pity. "You'd better think of a way to wake Lu up. However, I reckon it'll be soon." Seeing that Zhang Qingxiao didn't say anything, Xiaohua could only wave the spirit storage bag in his hand and put Jiang Lu into the space. "Secondly?" Zhang Qingxiao smiled and said, "You have to tell me who provoked you. I'm very curious in this world, who can make you so upset?" Xiaohua sighed deeply, looked around and said, "Let's go, find a secluded place." Yes, it seemed that other than Zhang Qingxiao, Xiaohua could tell these things to others, right? When Zhang Qingxiao heard this, she unconsciously curled her lips and said coldly, "Little junior brother, I'm not talking about you, but you're giving too much face to Kai Hongxia. And this girl is too pretentious. There's a saying that if you don't court death, you won't die. If you court death, you'll die. Letting go of a cultivator like you, who has a promising future. Instead of pestering you, she actually let go. This kind of trick of loosening the reins only to grasp them better is really too childish. Now, who knows how many female cultivators in the 3 kingdoms of cultivation are looking forward to dual cultivation with Nameless. When the names of Terrifying Phoenix and Nameless are revealed, you can sit in the myriad Thunder Valley and wait for others to propose marriage. Chapter 2997. Second senior brother, don't make sarcastic remarks. Xiaohua bitterly smiled. I'm having a headache right now. I'm really not like what Hong Xia said in her heart. Zhang Qingxiao laughed sinisterly and said, in fact, it's simple. You only need to conquer her completely physically and suppress her psychologically. Then she won't even let out a fart. Look at my wife, that charming sword cultivator. Every time I make her want to die. Whatever I say, she can only listen attentively. She dares to say half a no word? Second senior brother. Xiaohua shouted, not every female cultivator is like this, right? What else can we do? Zhang Qingxiao smacked her lips. Destroy the bright flower stone. Even if we close our eyes, it's still the same. Xiao Hua helplessly lowered his head. He really couldn't endure Zhang Qingxiao's vulgarity. Little junior brother, do you know what is called a man's true colors? Zhang Qingxiao said with a smile. I know. Isn't a man's true colors the true colors of a hero? Xiao Hua asked curiously, isn't it the spirit of not sweating, not afraid of hardship? That's right. No matter if it's a man or a hero, they are all lustful. When dual cultivating, they're not afraid of sweating, not afraid of hardship. Zhang Qingxiao said with a smile, saints have made such a judgment about us male cultivators. Can we be stronger than saints? Xiao Hua was speechless after hearing Zhang Qingxiao's fallacy. Actually, every male cultivator is the same. Zhang Qingxiao said indifferently, they all want to conquer female cultivators and take every female cultivator for themselves. Even if they can't succeed, they will imagine it in their hearts. Some ambiguity, some small actions, it's just to satisfy the instincts of male cultivators. Is that so? In this aspect, Xiao Hua was far worse than Zhang Qingxiao. Of course, you don't need to care about these ambiguities. They're just small things before the meal, they'll be forgotten after eating. Only your fairy hong xia, your shui shui is the main dish, the main meal. Zhang Qingxiao said with a smile, after a meal, everyone will remember the main meal. Who still remembers those small things? Even if the small things are delicious and beautiful, they can't fill the stomach. Then, do you think Hong Xia Shi? Xiao Hua asked for help again. Dump her for 10 years. Zhang Qingxiao laughed. Look at how lonely she is. She will definitely come back to beg you. Really? Really? But what if he doesn't? Damn it, ask Zhang Yutong to find you a beautiful swordswoman. Zhang Qingxiao said nonchalantly, even if we can't defeat the sword cultivator in the Dao sword battle, we have to conquer the swordswoman in bed. Forget it. Xiao Hua was dejected again. He stretched out his hand and said, what about the cultivation method? If that's the case, I might as well enter the nascent soul stage as soon as possible and win the Red Cloud fair and square. If you don't conquer her, just wait for her to unite with Shui Shui and conquer you. Zhang Qingxiao pulled out a small storage pouch from her waist and handed it to Xiao Hua. Many thanks, second senior brother. Xiao Hua took the storage bag without even looking at it and said weakly. There are various nascent soul cultivation methods in this storage bag. There are even 2 complete spirit severing cultivation methods. I'm afraid it will be enough for you to use in a short time. Zhang Qingxiao said seriously, as for the spells and secret techniques used by nascent soul cultivators, there are also many inside. You should also take a look. Hearing that there was actually a spirit severing cultivation method inside, Xiao Hua was stunned. His heart was filled with warmth. He looked at Zhang Qingxiao and bowed. Second senior brother has worked hard. Little brother will definitely not let second senior brother down. It's nothing. On Xiaoyu continent, there are not many people that I can help. You are lucky to be one of them. Zhang Qingxiao waved her hand, but then she said with shifty eyes, oh right, do you have any more spiritual herbs? If it was another day, Xiao Hua would definitely hesitate. After all, he had not returned to the Imperial Thunder sect. If he took out a lot of spiritual herbs, it would definitely arouse Zhang Qingxiao's suspicion. But seeing that she even took out a spirit-severing cultivation method, why should he be stingy? Zhang Qingxiao rubbed her hands, very excited. Take out a storage bag? Xiao Hua urged. But Zhang Qingxiao took out 3 storage bags at once. Xiao Hua did not hesitate. He took out a soul nest from his arms and pretended to take out a lot of spiritual herbs from the space, filling the 3 storage bags to the brim. Ha! Zhang Qingxiao laughed. I knew it. You went to Mount Meng, how could you come back empty-handed? I'm afraid that you have plundered all the grass roots in Mount Meng, right? Not to that extent. Xiao Hua smiled and did not refute. She asked again, by the way, how is the battle in Sky Patrol City? Tell me seriously. Sai, don't mention it. Zhang Qingxiao waved her hand and said, Even I underestimated the sword cultivators in this battle. I did not expect that the sword cultivators had already set up a powerful sword formation outside Sky Patrol City. They killed the city lord of Sky Patrol City, Immortal Shuiyu, in the sword formation. Not even a nascent soul cultivator could escape. Moreover, 4 nascent soul cultivators, Immortal Miyu and Immortal Quangtian from Imperial Thunder Sect, and Immortal Qin Yen and Immortal Laoyan from Mo Sang Mountain, were captured by the sword formation at the same time. In my opinion, if they did not use the disciples of Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain to threaten Dao Sect, the 4 of them would not have escaped from the sword formation. Hiss, Xiaohua gasped and said in disbelief, "Where did the sword cultivators get such a powerful sword formation?" However, in an instant, Jiao Xia's peerless smile appeared in Xiaohua's mind, and a sense of powerlessness appeared. Yes, in the hands of the omnipotent Jiao Xia, what was a sword formation that could kill a nascent soul cultivator? Now, even if the True Path Sect cultivators came to their senses and sent their army to surround Sky Patrol City, with the support of the sword formation, the True Path Sect has attacked countless times and there seems to be no sign of them breaking through. Moreover, the most important thing is that the sword cultivators have not taken out the 4 nascent soul cultivators and the disciples of 2 sections. Therefore, Dao Sect is bound to lose this time. Zhang Qingxiao sighed. Not necessarily. Xiaohua shook his head. The sword cultivators have an invulnerable sword formation. Why doesn't Dao Sect have an invincible formation? Now, Dao Sect is attacking while setting up the formation. When the formation is completed, it will be the time when Sky Patrol City's sword formation is destroyed. What about the disciples of the 2 sects? Zhang Qingxiao smiled. You don't want the disciples of Imperial Thunder Sect to return to Sky Thunder Peak? This is a difficult problem. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and scratched his head. In the end, the sword cultivators will definitely talk to the disciples of the 2 sects. Nothing, unless no one dares to ignore the safety of the disciples of the 2 sects. Zhang Qingxiao smiled. Otherwise, no sect will send disciples in the next sword battle. Fortunately, I have already escaped from the battle. Faced with such an unsolvable problem, Xiaohua could only be lucky that he had escaped from the battle earlier. Yes, you should go back quickly. Under normal circumstances, your contribution would definitely cause a sensation in the entire Imperial Thunder Sect. But at this time, there will be enthusiasm, but there will definitely be no jubilation. Zhang Qingxiao said with a smile. Xiaohua sighed. Before the battle, I definitely didn't think about this. I just wanted to save my life and save Cui Hongshan's life. But who would have thought that the terrifying phoenix would come, and so would John Doe? I want to see how you deal with them. Zhang Qingxiao gloated. Why don't you come to Heavenly Demon Sect to hide? Forget it, so what if it's John Doe? I don't believe that the Imperial Thunder Sect will be unhappy with a golden core cultivator with nascent soul cultivation. Xiaohua waved his hand. He had obtained the secret technique of Huda Village's Elder Wu, so he was confident that he could hide his secret, so he was less afraid. Good. Zhang Qingxiao clapped. If you say so, then so be it. If it doesn't work, I will use the power of Heavenly Demon Sect to save you. Thank you, second senior brother. Xiaohua got up and prepared to leave. Take care. Little junior brother. Zhang Qingxiao laughed behind his back. Remember, a real man doesn't have to worry about not having a wife. Oh, by the way, the dual cultivation secret technique of Devil Sect is in the storage bag. You should take a look at it. Xiaohua's figure suddenly fell a few feet. Obviously, he was scared by Zhang Qingxiao's words, and then he rushed in the direction of Imperial Thunder Sect. Ha ha! Zhang Qingxiao laughed loudly and disappeared from the secluded foothills. Not to mention Xiaohua's return to Imperial Thunder Sect, the focus of the 3 cultivation countries' attention, the center of the Dao Sword War, the Heavenly Patrol City at the border of the country of Xi, was just as Zhang Qingxiao said. Hundreds of thousands or even millions of Dao Sect cultivators had surrounded the Heavenly Patrol City. Within a few hundred miles of the Heavenly Patrol City, the patrolling cultivators were like flies that filled the sky. They seemed to be flying in a disorderly manner, but they were also flying in a very orderly manner. A flying sword that seemed to be a messenger had just flown out of the heavenly patrol city and was about to rush toward a gradually widening gap. Although the flying sword was extremely fast, it only reached the edge of the gap. Immediately, several cultivators flew to the center of the gap and waved their magic treasures at the same time, easily capturing the flying sword. One of the cultivators took the flying sword and immediately flew away, while the other cultivators began to fly in a disorderly manner. It seemed that this kind of situation often happened, but they still ignored it. However, as the patrolling cultivators flew, their eyes were filled with vigilance and a trace of helplessness as they looked at the heavenly patrol city in the distance that they were no longer familiar with. At this time, the heavenly patrol city did not have the city outline of the earlier heavenly patrol city. Instead, it was wrapped in a layer of green sword light. From a distance, the sword light looked like a huge oval chicken egg, but upon closer inspection, it looked like layers of fine spider webs. Moreover, tens of thousands of small swords were cruising inside the spider web, more nimbly than tadpoles. These small swords were similar to the cultivators in midair. The trajectory of the flying swords was very mysterious. Every time a small sword streaked across the green light, a faint wisp of heaven and earth spirit chi was produced from the green light, and the heaven and earth spirit chi was instantly absorbed by the flying swords. The green light grew larger, and more small swords were born from it. It seemed that these small swords were endless, and the green light was also endless. He had also told fellow Taoist in the group that he would update during the final battle of the Tao swords so that everyone could watch it in one go. Therefore, it had been delayed until today. Fellow Taoists in the group can testify to this. Now, fellow Taoist Wandering Dragon Holiday has also rewarded him. He will update 5 times a day for the next 4 days. Then he will see how the plot progresses and decide whether to update more. Therefore, there is no such thing as fellow Taoist Wandering Dragon Holiday, said. Fellow Taoists, you should still believe in the character of fellow Taoists. The 5 times should be 11 o'clock, 1300 hours, 1500 hours, 1700 hours, 1900 hours. Of course, I have to thank the other fellow Taoists for their support. I hope you will continue to support me in the future. Chapter 2998. The green light condensed into a spider web, and the spider web produced green light. This was the Tiani green light sword formation that sword cultivators were proud of. This Tiani green light sword formation not only broke the snow and ice wave formation of the Sky Patrol City 100 days ago, but also successfully killed Shui Yuzhenren and captured all the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain. Now, it firmly protected the Sky Patrol City that belonged to sword cultivators, resisting the waves of attacks of millions of Tao Sect cultivators. The attacks of the True Path Sect cultivators went from 3 times a day out of anger to once a day. 100 days later, they had not launched any attacks for more than 10 days. After all, they had used all the means available to them. The sword formation of the Sky Patrol City was as solid as a tortoise's shell. All the magic formations of the True Path Sect could not do anything to it. They could only surround it and plan for the long term. However, after the Tao Sect cultivators patrolling the sky, there were even more cultivators holding different magic tools and materials as they flew around busily. It was obvious that they were setting up a magic array. This magic array covered an extremely wide area. The ones in charge of setting it up were actually 4 nascent soul cultivators. These 4 nascent soul cultivators were also a little strange. 2 of them were early nascent soul cultivators. They stood in the middle with arrogant expressions, but these 2 didn't speak. They just stood there with their hands folded in their sleeves as they stared at the other 2 nascent soul cultivators beside them. The 2 cultivators in the middle were none other than Jiang Mingzi from the Immortal Ascension Sect and Taoist Master Bluefeather from the Immortal Music Sect. Next to the 2 of them, one was early nascent soul spiritual master Pin Xian of the Black Sky Sect, and the other was middle nascent soul spiritual master Xian Jing of the Kunlun Sect. The 2 of them each held a jade slip, looking at it while discussing in a low voice. From time to time, they would issue orders. As for the people around them, They were Xiong Huasong of the Black Sky sect and the people of the Kunlun sect. Jiang Mingzi and Immortal Blue Feather's eyes were staring at the jade slip in the hands of Immortal Pin Xian and Xian Jing. Less than 100 li away from Zhenren Pin Xian, Xian Jing and the others, on a not-so-tall snowy peak, there was a half-foot-tall lampstand. The bean-sized flame emitted an orange-red brilliance, covering the entire snowy peak. Although there were snowflakes floating down from time to time, and there was also a whistling cold wind, these were unable to break through the brilliance. Under the light, the wind was calm and the waves were calm. However, the atmosphere under the light and shadow was not really calm and tranquil. There were a dozen nascent soul cultivators on the snowy peak, with Sun Yunzi in the middle. In front of Sun Yunzi, who was frowning, sat Reverend Lu Hong with her legs crossed. These two late nascent soul cultivators with the highest cultivation base both had unsightly expressions on their faces. The rest of the nascent soul cultivators, regardless of whether they were middle nascent soul or early nascent soul, were scattered around them, either sitting cross-legged or standing casually. On the side of Sun Yunzi and Reverend Lu Hong stood Pan Dongmin, Gu Yun, Zhu Qinghe and Jiang Fian respectfully. These four think tanks of Dao sect had already lost the cold arrogance they had at the beginning of the battle. The cold arrogance that did not fade even when facing nascent soul cultivators had long faded away silently under the sword cultivators' tactics and heavy fatal blows. Their expressions were respectful, and the unwillingness in their eyes could not conceal the kind of dejection in their hearts. Sun Yunzi seemed to have stopped asking for the opinions of Zhu Qinghe and the others. He glanced at the silent crowd and said, "Is there anything else you want to say, my fellow Taoists?" The crowd was still silent. Although the nascent soul cultivators were in different positions, they all looked at each other, and no one spoke. Looking at such an awkward silence, Reverend Lu Hong coughed and said with a smile, "We have besieged Sky Patrol City for 100 days. Earlier, everyone was talking at once, and each idea was better than the other. Now that we have racked our brains for so many days, where can we find any good ideas? If you want to exchange your experience in cultivation, I'm afraid everyone will talk nonstop. But when it comes to attacking a city, we are not as good as these little kids." If it were any other day, Gu Yun and the others would definitely say a few humble words. But at this time, they were like clay statues, and did not dare to say a word, as if they had not heard anything at all. Sun Yunzi sneered. "The little kids are smart enough, but unfortunately, they are not cunning enough. For the past few years, they have been led by the nose by those old swordsmen, and in the end, they realized that everything has returned to the beginning." "Fellow Taoist Sun Yunzi, you can't say that." In the distance, Reverend Yu Qing's face was gloomy as he retorted faintly, "After several years of war, our counterattack was also powerful. Otherwise, these sword cultivators would not have been forced to put all their forces into Sky Patrol City, forcing us to fight the final battle." "That's right." Reverend He Ping also nodded and said, "Although it was somewhat unexpected for the sword cultivators to attack Sky Patrol City, after all, the four little kids had made preparations before, and even made arrangements in and outside Sky Patrol City. But the sword cultivators were too determined, and their investment was also huge, so we were caught off guard." Then, Reverend He Ping pointed at the almost invisible green light in the distance and said, "Even if we knew that the sword cultivators had set up such a big sword formation, I'm afraid it was not easy to resist." "They had made preparations?" Sun Yunzi snorted and did not say more. Instead, he sighed and said, "Yes, fellow Taoist He Ping is right. What the hell is this sword formation of the sword cultivators? We have changed our tactics and attacked it for 100 days, but it seems to have no effect at all. Nonsense. If it could be easily broken by us. Can this sword formation be the trump card of the sword cultivators?" Among the people present, only Reverend Lu and I could refute Sun Yunzi directly. "When I think about how Reverend Shuiyu was killed by the sword formation with the defense formation of Sky Patrol City, my scalp tingles. Do you have anything to say?" Sun Yunzi snorted and turned to Gu Yun and the others, saying, "When we arrived at Sky Patrol City, I didn't hear any more suggestions from you." "Alas, martial uncles and martial uncles, We have some expertise in planning, but we are not as comprehensive as the seniors in terms of battle and attack. Pan Dongmin sighed, bowed, and answered, "Moreover, sword cultivators now have the initiative and even a great chance of victory. This is a naked slap to the faces of us juniors, letting us know that there is always someone better than us out there." Martial Uncle Sun Yunzi. Since Pan Dongmin had spoken, Jiang Fian naturally would not fall behind. She also bowed and said, "I don't have any suggestions, but I have some small ideas." "Ah, small ideas, well, go ahead." Sun Yunzi laughed, as if Jiang Fian's words were very funny. Pan Dongmin glanced at Jiang Fian, as if to stop her from speaking, but Jiang Fian was not moved and said, "I think that the sword cultivators are actually in a very awkward situation, and are not much better than our Dao sect. After they captured Sky Patrol City, they did not take the initiative to attack, but instead wanted to hide like a turtle and defend. Doesn't this mean that they have no confidence? What's more, there were no cultivators of the Dao sect in the vicinity of the Sentry City when the Shuiyu sage was killed. Even the nascent soul masters that we arranged were far away. Who would have known that Senior Shuiyu was killed? Isn't the current situation of our Dao sect in the Three Kingdoms deliberately spread by the sword cultivators? Isn't it just to give us an invisible pressure? Do they want us to have a decisive battle with the sword cultivators? In fact, if Sky Patrol City had not fallen, based on the various battles, the swordsmen and spirit stones of Huan country would be far inferior to our Dao sect in terms of swordsmen and spirit stones. The tug-of-war would only be a great victory for our Dao sect. The results of the previous battles have proven this point. It is also because of this that when we were planning, although we considered Sky Patrol City, we did not focus on it. After all, Sky Patrol City is just a point, and the battle is a line, a plane. Also, the sword cultivators captured Sky Patrol City and killed Sage Shuiyu, but in the public announcement, they did not mention the 4 nascent soul seniors of Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain. A few days ago, they even sent out the communication talismans of the seniors of the 2 sects. The martial uncles have read these 2 jade slips and are prepared to send them back to Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain. But what does this mean? It means that the sword cultivators are not very confident in defending Sky Patrol City. Chapter 2999. Everyone had been discussing this topic ever since the news of the fall of Sky Patrol City spread. However, no one brought it up as they knew it was a hot potato. Sun Yunzi naturally would not make any decision and could only let everyone discuss it. Unfortunately, everyone wanted to avoid such a big matter, so who would speak up? Under the orange light, there was dead silence. Seeing that no one spoke, Pan Dongmin sighed in his heart and bowed to break the deadlock. He said, "Uncles, you're right. Junior sister Jiang is also right. Although what Uncle Sun Yunzi said is important, it's not urgent. I think now that the sword tomb has disappeared, the natural barrier of Sky Patrol City is gone. If the swordsmen of Huan country come to help, although we're not afraid, we're under attack from both inside and outside. We are at a disadvantage, so we need to end the battle quickly. The longer we delay, the more variables there will be. Only by launching a thunderous attack on the swordsmen can we turn the situation around. Moreover, although Sky Patrol City is big, all the swordsmen may not be in it. I think they must be preparing for a bigger war and are about to attack the swordsmen of Huan country. The fall of Sky Patrol City is not the end, but the starting point of a new war. It's the beginning of a series of plans." Pan Dongmin had just finished speaking when Zhu Qinghe shook his head again. "I don't think so. The cultivators of the 3 countries are powerful and rich in resources, so we can support such a vast battle. However, Huan country is bitterly cold and has very few spiritual stone veins. What do they have to compete with us? Sky Patrol City is their last resort. They're waiting for the moment when they can't hold on anymore, which is the moment when they negotiate with our Taoist sect. Their persistence now is just for negotiation, a bargaining chip." "Ha, Immortal Lu," she was amused and laughed. "There's a saying in the secular world, empty talk will harm the country. It means that you're not down to earth, you're just imagining things. You want to make the country prosper with your mouth, but in the end, you'll only end up with your family ruined. Your analysis is correct and reasonable, but if you really want to fight with the swordsman, I don't mean to say that you're still too inexperienced. We understand. Solitary Cloud had not spoken all this while. At that moment he bowed and said, Junior's performance in this battle is truly shameful. Even I feel ashamed. We were too naive and did not understand the complicated situation of the battle clearly enough. We have caused our Tao sect to be in such a terrible state. This Junior apologizes on behalf of the four of us. When Zhu Qinghe and the others heard that, complicated expressions appeared on their faces. However, Solitary Cloud ignored them and did not look at them. He merely lowered his head. Yes, martial uncles, please punish us. Zhu Qinghe sighed in his heart and also bowed. Pan Dongmin and Jiang Fian didn't dare to put up a strong front and bowed together to ask for forgiveness. Sun Yunzi glanced at the crowd, then at Reverend Liushi. After pondering for a while, he raised his hand and said, You just wait and get up. The great battle of Tao and sword is meant to train you all. There will naturally be victories and defeats, so there is no need to be too concerned about it. The outcome of this battle had yet to be decided, and it was hard to say who would win or lose. This old man feels that all of you should think more about what you've gained from this battle. If you can comprehend more, it will be the result of our battle. If you can play a role in the battle of demon-resisting Valley, that will be the greatest gain. We understand. Solitary Cloud and the others replied in unison. Then, Sun Yunzi no longer paid attention to them. He looked at Reverend Liushi and asked, Junior brother Xianjing, how is the situation over there? There is no news yet. Reverend Liushi shook his head. However, Xianjing and Reverend Pin Xian are both masters of formations. Although the Heaven and Earth Demon Sealing formation is a great formation left by the immortal realm, in their hands, they will be able to set it up smoothly. This old man has long heard that this legendary immortal formation has fallen into the hands of Immortal Music Sect and Immortal Ascension School, but the two sects have always kept it a secret. If not for the crucial moment of today's battle, how could they be willing to take it out? Sun Yunzi said with a smile, Look at how stingy Jiang Mingzi and Lan Yu are, just like their sect leader. They are afraid that Reverend Pin Xian will leave something behind, so they keep a close eye on it every day for fear of any negligence. Alas, this is naturally understandable. Yun Mingzi of Changbai sect said faintly, That is a formation left by the immortal realm. Although it is somewhat incomplete, after all, it is very powerful. Immortal Music Sect and Immortal Ascension School have their own immortal fate, and each sect has half of it. Now, for the sake of the war, they have to bear the pain of taking it out. No matter what, they have to keep a close eye on it and not let it leak out. Hearing this, Sun Yunzi seemed to be able to feel the faint sour taste in Yun Mingzi's mouth, so he raised his head and looked at Reverend Yu Qing of Taiqing sect, asking, Fellow Taoist Yu Qing, your Taiqing sect is a great inheritance sect, and is also famous for its formations. What do you think of this Heaven and Earth Demon Sealing formation? Reverend Yu Qing hurriedly waved his hand and said, Fellow Taoist Sun Yunzi, my Taiqing sect has never dared to claim to be a formation. Your words are somewhat wrong. This idea of Heaven and Earth Demon Sealing formation was put forward by you. Don't tell me you don't know its origin. Who knows who has immortal fate? Who knows where there is a great demon sealing formation? Yes, if we can get an immortal tool, not only will it be powerful and can protect us, but the refining method, runes and talismans inside will also be available for us to study. The journey of the Great Tao will also be easier. Reverend Lu Ming said, and glanced at Sun Yunzi intentionally or unintentionally. Sun Yunzi knew what Reverend Lu Ming was referring to, and sighed, Some sects are really blessed by nature, and we can't compare with them. I'm afraid the thunder-controlling sect of your country is like this. Reverend He Ping said with a double meaning. Senior Qian Yun, the patriarch of the thunder-controlling sect, comprehended the Tao with the help of the thunder-concealing bead. I'm afraid he left it in the thunder-controlling sect, right? Sun Yunzi naturally understood what Reverend He Ping meant. He laughed and said, "You're wrong, fellow Taoist He Ping. The thunder-concealing bead is a natural object, not an immortal tool. However, since Senior Qian Yun can comprehend the thunder-concealing bead, he must have his reasons for choosing the Sky Thunder Peak to establish a sect. Maybe, like fellow Taoist He Ping, there is an immortal world thunder element treasure in the Sky Thunder Peak. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that's not true." Reverend Lu Ming shook his head and said, "If Qian Lei has such a treasure, I'm afraid he would have already flown out of seclusion and broken this Sky Patrol City with an immortal tool. Those are hundreds of thousands of disciples of the thunder-controlling sect. Qian Lei's heart would ache." Haha, everyone laughed, but unfortunately, no disciples of the thunder-controlling sect and Mo Sang Mountain were present. Chapter 3000. When the crowd stopped laughing, Immortal Lu Shi stood up again, looked into the distance, and said, "It has been more than 10 days since we've harassed the sword practitioners in Celestial City. I'm afraid it will take some time for Xian Jing and the others to set up the formation. We can't stay idle. Let's go. Which fellow Taoist wants to test the power of the sword practitioners' formation with me? Let's go, let's go." Several nascent soul practitioners stood up and clamored, "We might have to go. Although we can't achieve anything, we can't let the sword practitioners know about our plan." After that, several rays of light of different colors shot up into the sky from the snow-capped peak, flying out in all directions of Celestial City. Not long after, a loud whistling sound was heard from all over Celestial City. 5 hurricanes of different colors rushed into the sky like wild dragons. Wherever the hurricanes passed, the falling snowflakes disappeared instantly. The entire area within 100 miles of Celestial City was suddenly clean. Even the dense red clouds high in the sky were affected, rolling up extremely long cloud waves like a raging sea. The cloud waves rippled layer by layer, and a sound like muffled thunder reverberated in the sky, like a war drum beating in everyone's heart. Similar to the sky high in the sky, the space above Celestial City that had just been swept away by the hurricanes. Not only did the snowflakes disappear, but even the sound was expelled. The silence was terrible. However, the silence only lasted for a moment. The 5 hurricanes came down with a whoosh. Every ray of light in the hurricanes would make a sound when they collided with each other, producing a great force. Thus, a loud rumble was heard from the place where the hurricanes collided with the sword formation. The sound was 10 times more powerful than the muffled thunder in the sky. At the same time, various kinds of light burst out violently from the places where the 5 hurricanes and the sword formation collided. Not only was the ground shaking, but the whole space was shaking. Even the seemingly indestructible green light was shaking violently. Rays of green light scattered out, and the small swords were torn apart by the explosion. Bumps deeper than a pool appeared on the surface of the sword formation. As soon as the sound of the explosion faded, a rainbow that ran through the sky above Celestial City appeared. The rainbow rolled rapidly, and a great suction force was generated. The scattered hurricanes and a huge amount of heaven and earth spiritual energy were sucked into the rainbow. In the blink of an eye, the rainbow turned into a giant cudgel that was dozens of miles long and hundreds of feet thick. The giant cudgel was raised, and the red clouds in the sky were disturbed by it. Rays of sunlight actually penetrated through the clouds. Whoosh, the raised cudgel then smashed down again, with a loud boom that was more powerful than the previous explosion. Many Tao sect practitioners who were hundreds of miles away from Celestial City could not withstand the strong impact and fell from the sky. Countless strong gusts of wind blew in all directions again. Snowflakes flew everywhere, and broken ice splashed in all directions. The green light, which was already somewhat tattered, was now cracked by the giant cudgel. It was like a steep cliff at the peak of a mountain, and within the cracks, there were rays of light that looked like flying swords. In the distant sky, Sun Yunzi and the others were watching. Unfortunately, they did not smile when they saw such an attack. They even frowned slightly. Although the attack was fierce, it was obviously not as powerful as the initial attack. It was not that the power of the formation was weak, but that the caster had lost his confidence. Just as immortal Lu Shi said, an attack without confidence could only be reduced to noise, and could not form a real fatal blow. Sure enough, the giant cudgel dimmed after the first blow. Although it could still be raised, it seemed to be weak. 2 flying swords came out from the deep depression in the green light. The flying swords shuttled back and forth, and rays of green light flew out from the sword shadows. The green light was like a swimming fish, and also like a flying sword. It also rushed into the edge of the depression, and a burst of flowing light appeared. It was like a clear spring flowing into a gully, and the depression could be seen with the naked eye. Sigh, forget it. Sun Yunzi flicked his sleeves, sighed in his heart, and turned to leave. But at this moment, from the north of Sky Patrol City, another meteor-like ray of light with a long tail rushed under the giant cudgel that was about to be raised. This is not a flying sword. It's a technique of my Dao sect. Sun Yunzi raised his eyebrows and immediately became alert. The brilliance around him disappeared, and he looked at the meteor with interest. When the ray of light touched the giant cudgel, it immediately exploded like a spark. The entire giant cudgel was also blown up by the ray of light, and even the cracks began to burn. The burning flame was extremely strange, and it was even faster than the ray of light that streaked across the sky. In a moment, the giant cudgel that was dozens of feet in size and dozens of miles in length was ignited. Swoosh, the flames on the giant cudgel spread out and fell on the Sky Patrol City below like a fairy scattering flowers. Fine sounds rang out incessantly as the falling flames covered the entire sky. Every time they fell by a few inches, a large amount of heaven and earth spirit chi would be sucked into them, causing the flames to expand a little. When the flying flames that covered dozens of miles fell, it had already completely covered the green light array outside the Sky Patrol City. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A burst of light sounds, as fine as rain hitting a banana leaf, and as gentle as the wind blowing the willow branches, came into contact with the green light that was being repaired. As soon as the green light touched the flames immediately turned into sharp vines that wrapped around the flying sword formed by the green light. Naturally, the flying sword also emitted a dazzling sword light to contend with the flames. In a stalemate, the green light was melted by the flames, and the flames were also extinguished by the green light. Although both sides were injured, it was obvious that the layers of green light were quickly disappearing. A few inches, a few feet, a few feet. The green light sword array that had not been broken for 100 days was showing signs of loosening. Buzz, buzz, buzz. 3 loud sword sounds were heard from 3 places in the Sky Patrol City. 3 thick green light giant swords rushed straight into the sky, and when they passed the flames that were like a lake of fire, they rushed to the center at the same time. Boom! A deafening sharp sound was heard. Even a nascent soul cultivator as strong as Sun Yunzi could not help but frown. Seeing that the light protecting his body was shattered by the sharp sound, he had no choice but to activate his magic power to protect himself. The golden elixir cultivators who were watching the battle from afar quickly retreated. Their Taoist robes fluttered and they almost lost their balance. They were like drifting debris, looking very helpless and embarrassed. Sun Yunzi originally wanted to help, but at this moment, a whistling sound was heard again. At the place where the 3 giant swords collided, countless flying swords were born. These flying swords fell like a rain of swords, once again covering dozens of miles of space. There was originally no spiritual energy in this space, but when the flying swords fell, strands of green light were born between the flying swords. From afar, the flying swords were like raindrops, and the green light was like a smokescreen. There was no extra suspense when the rain fell on the fire. Sigh. Sun Yunzi didn't know how many times he had sighed. He understood that this meteor-like radiance was definitely a technique of some clan. If it was placed elsewhere, it would definitely be as powerful as a thunderbolt. However, within this mysterious sword cultivator formation, it was somewhat insignificant. However, to be able to detect that this green light sword array is made up of 3 giant swords, this method is quite powerful. Sun Yunzi turned and flew away, thinking to himself, The method that the green light giant swords use to extinguish the flames is somewhat similar to the heaven and earth dual forms demon sealing array that we're going to use. It does seem to make sense. After Sun Yunzi left, many of the Taoist sect cultivators also left. It was as if this was not a battlefield of Taoist sword sect, but a party of fireworks. The smoke-filled sky gradually calmed down. The wind rose again, the snow fell again, the dark clouds slowly closed, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth also slowly flowed in. However, under the one-day green light sword array, Chong Taishu looked at Cheng Minghua, Chilean Butterfly, and Ruo Tian, who each held a green light sword, and his expression turned serious. 3 sword masters, how was the power of the array just now? It was quite powerful. Ruo Tian replied without hesitation. My Supreme Harmony green light sword has already unleashed 80% of its power. If we don't counterattack, I'm afraid we won't be able to withstand the attack. Yes, 80%. 3 green light swords. Chong Taishu nodded slightly. I'm afraid Sky Patrol City's defense is at its last gasp. The time for us to reveal our true intentions has finally arrived. However, Chilean Butterfly smiled and said, Sword Master Chong, aren't you worrying too much? The Taoist sect has been attacking Sky Patrol City for more than 100 days and there hasn't been any improvement. Today, they only used 3 green light swords to destroy their array. If they really wanted to attack, wouldn't they have to kill a few nascent soul stage cultivators? Besides, the Taoist sect has already used all the methods they can. I don't believe that they have more powerful methods. Don't you believe in the power of the one-day green light sword array? Chong Taishu smiled bitterly and said, Of course I know that this sword array is powerful. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put all my eggs in one basket and put all my forces in Sky Patrol City. However, the problem is that we can't guard this Sky Patrol City forever. Sooner or later, the Path sect will find a way to break this green light sword array. We must provoke the Path sect's anger before they break it, especially before the time limit that we promised them. We must make them fight to the death with us. Actually, within these 100 days, Sword Master Chong can challenge the nascent soul stage cultivators of the Taoist sect at any time. With their help, it won't be difficult to kill Sun Yunzi and Lu Ni Jinren. Zhuo Ming smiled and asked, But why does Sword Master Chong keep retreating? Killing Shui Yu is already enough to deter the 3 kingdoms of cultivation for a long time. If we kill them one after another, I'm afraid the Taoist sect will be angry. Chong Taishu smiled and said, Only by constantly attacking and defending can they realize that our sword cultivation is not inferior to their Taoist sects. And at the critical moment when they are struggling, we can launch a thunderous attack to completely crush their confidence and make them unable to take revenge. Chapter 3001. Of course, the most important thing is that they only agreed to help once. The most crucial moment has not come yet. Chong Taishu replied confidently. Actually, with the cyan light swords in our hands, our power may not be weaker than theirs. Chilean Butterfly said unhappily, No matter how critical the situation is, as long as you and I take action, can't we destroy the Taoism sect? Our cyan light swords are indeed powerful, but we need to set up a formation. Moreover, with the help of the cyan light swords, we may be able to kill a nascent soul stage cultivator, but we can't really make the Taoism sect cultivators fear us. As I said, only a thunderous strike will let them know that resistance is useless, and they will obediently admit defeat. Chong Taishu had to explain, but his explanation seemed to explain nothing. All right. Chilean Butterfly nodded slightly and waved her hand. The cyan light sword in her hand turned into a thunderbolt and rushed into the cyan light above the Sky Patrol City and disappeared. She then looked at somewhere in the city and whispered, Are they ready? I'm afraid it will take some time. That senior seems to be looking for something. Chong Taishu replied in a low voice. By the way, Sword Master Chong, it seems that the disciples who killed John Doe should have returned, right? Do they have any news? Cheng Minghua suddenly asked. Chong Taishu was obviously stunned and frowned. I forgot about this. It seems that there is really no news. However, 3 second-level sword masters of the sword realm are going to capture a cultivator at the early stage of the nascent soul stage. Perhaps the news has been sent back to the sword tomb, but because the Taoism sect besieged the Sky Patrol City, we can't get it. Well, I hope so. Cheng Minghua said worriedly. I always feel uneasy. This John Doe is really too mysterious. Hee, Sword Master Cheng, don't worry. With Lu Ruchang following them, they are brave and resourceful. How can there be any mistakes? Even if they can't capture John Doe, it will be the same if they kill him. Chilean Butterfly said with a smile. According to Sword Master Chong, even if the 3 of them return empty-handed, we only need to reveal John Doe's secret to immortal Mi Yu of the thunder-controlling sect. Do you think John Doe can still stay in the 3 cultivation kingdoms? I hope so, I hope so. Cheng Minghua chuckled and turned to leave. Chong Taishu narrowed his eyes and raised his head to look at the green sword screen. No one knew what he was thinking. On the other hand, Blue Butterfly's smile disappeared as she whispered, Swordsman Chong, do you think? Sai, that's right. To be honest, I do have a bad feeling about this. Chong Taishu looked around and saw that there was no one around, so he didn't try to hide anything. Since Wu Ming and his men dared to enter Meng Mountains so brazenly, they must have something to rely on. You're saying that the soul cultivators of Meng Mountains will also join the battle? Blue Butterfly asked in surprise. That's impossible, right? Nothing is impossible. Chong Taishu shook his head slightly. I'm afraid that even the nascent soul cultivators of the Dao sect think that it's impossible for us to take down the Sky Patrol City. But now, we've already taken him down. Xiaohua, nameless. Blue Butterfly let out a deep sigh. Xiaohua said goodbye to Zhang Qingxiao and flew to Sky Thunder Peak. It was not just a day. Seeing the familiar mountain range, Xiaohua was suddenly moved. He remembered that he was chased by immortal Jing Ru and ended up in a sorry state. He still remembered the feeling of returning to his hometown. Looking at the grass and trees, Xiaohua felt that the grass and trees here were different from the last time he came back. But when he thought of the myriad Thunder Valley, his master, senior brothers, and others, Xiaohua felt that the grass and trees here were very familiar. Only this place belonged to him. The sun was charming, the grass and trees were fresh, the mountains were stacked, and the green water was long. Everything made Xiaohua feel that even though he had gone to the Sky Patrol City, even though he had gone through several dangers and hovered between life and death a few times, it was all worth it. It was because he wanted to protect this family, his senior brothers and junior brothers who were cultivating in this family, and some of his martial nephews who were full of vitality. There were even juniors who had not joined the Imperial Thunder sect and had not met yet. Facing them, Xiaohua could say without regret that he had tried his best, that he had stopped the attack of the sword cultivators, and that he had used his strength to leave a beautiful space for them. Naturally, Xiaohua also sighed with emotion. The war between Dao and sword had lasted for more than 10 years. Countless cultivators had fallen on the battlefield, and the blood and tears shed were endless. Presumably, they also had the same thought before they died. Just like how he was, they wanted to protect the obsession in their hearts. They wanted to fight for their loved ones. For everything they protected at any cost. Thank you, Great Godhood. I hope these cultivators can sleep peacefully in the arms of Great Godhood. Involuntarily, Xiaohua had such a thought in his heart. Then, Xiaohua smiled bitterly and shook his head slightly. Damn it, I've stayed in Meng Mountain for too long. How can it be easy to enter the arms of Great God Hutu? That's the home of millions of Meng Mountain soul warriors. But just as he thought of this, Xiaohua suddenly quivered. He slapped his forehead and realized, that's not right. If the netherworld is transformed by Great God Hutu, it's the home of millions of Meng Mountain soul warriors. The Netherlink mirror can see the appearance of Xiao Mao's mother, but how can the Netherlink mirror see that Kai Zhuoxia isn't there? Then what did the Xiao see? Forget it, forget it. Xiao Hua was absent-minded for a moment, and then smiled bitterly. I've never thought of this before, and now I don't even dare to think about it. It seems, these are all great secrets hidden behind the heaven and earth. They're far from what little gold core cultivators like us can pry into. Perhaps only when we achieve great success in our cultivation will we have the qualifications to see what's going on. Great success in cultivation? What kind of realm is that? Transcending the tribulation to become an immortal? Then what kind of great matter is the great matter that Jiuxia mentioned? Unknowingly, Xiaohua stopped in midair. He was like a wanderer who was timid about returning home, his mind wandering thousands of miles. At this moment, a weak divine sense swept over, and a dozen patrolling disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect slowly flew over from afar. When the divine sense came into contact with Xiaohua, it quickly retracted after a brief investigation. The dozen or so disciples simultaneously circulated their magic power and flew over to Xiaohua. Oh! Xiaohua was naturally disturbed by the divine sense, and he smiled as he looked into the distance. Over there, the Imperial Thunder sect's disciples, who were merely chi refinement cultivators, flew over in a line. They all had their heads lowered, not daring to look directly at Xiaohua. Looking at these Imperial Thunder sect disciples and their respect, Xiaohua sighed in his heart. Wasn't he like this a few decades ago? Now, although he wasn't a nascent soul grandmaster, in terms of reputation, he wasn't inferior to any nascent soul grandmaster at all, right? Time was admittedly a butcher's knife, but it was also a step under the feet of a saint. Juniors greet martial uncle. Without waiting for them to get close, the Imperial Thunder sect disciples immediately stopped and bowed. Looking at their slightly childish faces, Xiaohua felt a sense of protection. He waved his hand with a smile and said, "No need to be so courteous. Wait here." "Thank you, martial uncle." Everyone stood up. "You're on patrol, right?" Xiaohua said with a smile. "Yes, martial uncle knows. Junior is Gen Mo, a disciple of Gen Lei Palace. Today, I'm in charge of the 7th. The disciple at the front, who was around the 12th layer of chi refinement, raised his head and answered on behalf of all the other disciples. However, he had only spoken half a sentence when he suddenly stopped. His face was filled with indescribable shock and ecstasy. He didn't care about the rest of the answer, and his breathing became hurried as he said, "Senior? Senior is Xiaohua, martial uncle Xiao." As soon as this disciple said this, the other disciples who didn't dare to raise their heads no longer cared about etiquette. One by one, they raised their heads. More than 10 pairs of eyes filled with worship and fervor were nailed onto Xiaohua's young face. His face was much younger than these disciples. "Martial Uncle Xiao, your martial Uncle Xiaohua of the myriad Thunder Valley." Before Xiaohua could speak, the 10th layer chi refinement disciple beside the former disciple shouted loudly. "Aside from martial Uncle Xiao, which Imperial Thunder Sect Foundation establishment cultivator has such a young appearance?" Among the participating Foundation establishment disciples, aside from martial Uncle Xiao, which one of them has just returned? Martial Uncle Xiao went out with the first team of the discussion hall to gain experience. He just happened to return. Everyone immediately shouted at the same time. After a while, more than 10 people suddenly came to their senses and bowed in unison. It was precisely the great etiquette of paying respect to a senior. Junior respectfully welcomes martial Uncle Xiaohua's triumphant return to the sect. You can wait for me." Xiaohua's heart felt warm. Looking at these disciples who were still somewhat pure in their hearts and seeing their respect, the feeling of everything was worth it from before was born again. Junior forgot. The disciple at the front slapped his forehead and hastily took out a message talisman from his bosom. Under the urging of his magic power, lightning flashed and rushed into the air. It was the Imperial Thunder Sect's unique Thunder Note talisman. Martial Uncle Xiao, among the hundreds of patrol teams in the Imperial Thunder Palace, every team leader has a special Thunder Note talisman. The Chi Refinement disciple respectfully explained, "This Thunder Note talisman is directly sent to the Xiao Lei Hall and received by our Imperial Thunder Palace's Palace Master." He said that Martial Uncle Xiao is the second greatest contributor to our Imperial Thunder sect. As long as Martial Uncle Xiao returns to the sect, he will personally welcome Martial Uncle Xiao on behalf of Lord Sect Master. Hee hee, it seems there's no need to be so polite, right? Although Xiao Hua's words were polite, he was also happy in his heart. After all, he had contributed a lot to the Imperial Thunder Sect and the three kingdoms of Dao cultivators. Although there were many secrets that he couldn't reveal for the time being able to obtain the Imperial Thunder Sect's affirmation was also an explanation for Xiao Hua's helplessness to the myriad Thunder Valley. Presumably, Master, who has always loved face, won't complain anymore, right? Xiao Hua thought to himself. Then he looked at the dozen or so respectful Qi refinement disciples and said with a smile, "There's no need to be so reserved. What are your names? Also, tell this old man about the situation in the sect. The other disciples who participated in the war have already returned, right?" After saying this, Xiao Hua couldn't help but laugh inwardly. This old man. With this old man's cultivation, I'm afraid I'll really have to call myself this old man in the future. Chapter 3002. Although Xiao Hua claimed to be an old man, he actually looked very young, and his expression was extremely amiable, without a trace of the arrogance of a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator. If they didn't use their magic power to probe and look at Xiao Hua's appearance countless times, these Qi refining disciples would never think that this seemingly ordinary cultivator was actually Xiao Hua, who was famous in the cultivation world. At this time, after listening to Xiao Hua's words, the respect in their hearts became even greater, but they also restrained their restraint and nervousness. The former disciple reported his name in a low voice, and the other disciples also hurriedly said their names, trying to get familiar with Xiao Hua. Unfortunately, after Xiao Hua heard it, he shook his head with a wry smile. Martial nephews, I'm old and have a bad memory. Except for the names of these martial nephews, I'm afraid I can't remember the others. However, I've remembered your appearance. If you have nothing to do in the future, go to the myriad Thunder Valley. If you meet more often, you'll naturally remember. We understand. I'm afraid we'll disturb Martial Uncle in the future. The group of disciples laughed, feeling that Xiao Hua was humorous. After all, cultivators were intelligent. How could he not remember the names of these dozen people? Everyone thought that Xiao Hua was joking, and what they cared about the most was the last sentence of Xiao Hua, which meant that he could give them pointers in their cultivation in the future. Who was Xiao Hua? He was now in the limelight of the Imperial Thunder Sect, second only to Wu Ming and Terrifying Phoenix in the conference hall of the Imperial Thunder Sect. His cultivation had been baptized by blood and fire in the great battle of Dao Sword, so he was more powerful than ordinary middle-stage foundation establishment cultivators. If it was someone else who gave them pointers, their master might say something, but if it was Xiao Hua, their master might only be happy, right? Besides, although they were all in the Imperial Thunder Sect, which foundation establishment cultivator would give pointers to other Thunder Palace disciples? After everyone laughed, they recounted the situation of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples returning to the mountain. Just as Xiao Hua expected, the Imperial Thunder Sect sent out a thunderboat to pick up all the disciples who participated in the first stage of the Great Battle of Dao Sword. On the day of the thunderboat's return, each Thunder Palace sent out a large number of disciples to welcome them. The scene was lively and sensational, which was definitely rare in the history of the Imperial Thunder Sect. It was a great ceremony for these disciples who returned with honor. It also expressed the gratitude of the Imperial Thunder Sect to these disciples. Moreover, after these disciples returned, all of them were rewarded by their respective sections. Those disciples who had battle achievements were also rewarded generously by their respective lightning palaces. Many disciples were like Cui Hongshan and were given important positions by their respective lightning palaces. Apart from the 100,000 disciples who had returned to the mountain, only Xiao Hua, the disciple who had followed the first team of the discussion hall to gain experience, was left. He was the only one who had not returned. However, no matter how many honors and rewards there were, they couldn't cover up the loss of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Less than 100,000 disciples returned. Thinking back to that day when the thunderboat was activated, tens of thousands of barges were vying for the river. Thinking back to that day when the thunderbolt was activated and the fervor of the tens of thousands of barges were about to trample the dawn rain continent under their feet, although Xiao Hua was only listening to it, his heart was also distressed. Where are the corpses of the fallen disciples? After everyone finished speaking, Xiao Hua softly asked again. Everyone looked distressed at Xiao Hua's question. The former disciple said in a low voice, "The fallen seniors are all buried in the Valley of Valor." Valley of Valor? Xiao Hua frowned slightly, as if he was unfamiliar with this name. That disciple was tactful and hurriedly explained. The Valley of Valor is where the corpses of disciples who made special contributions to the Imperial Thunder sect are buried. Disciples who died in the Great Immortal Demon War or the Great Dao Sword War are usually sent there. That disciple then told Xiao Hua the location of the Valley of Valor. "Sigh, when I have free time, I'm afraid I'll have to pay my respects there." Xiao Hua sighed inwardly. Although he could protect the first team of the Imperial Thunder sect, how could a single person turn the tide of a great battle? How many people could he protect? In particular, some of the Imperial Thunder sect's disciples were personally killed by Xiao Hua. After hearing Xiao Hua's words, the dozen or so disciples became even more respectful. Because they were originally on patrol, they had welcomed many disciples who had returned to the mountain, but none of them had ever asked about the location of the Valley of Valor, let alone paid their respects there. Of course, perhaps these disciples already knew and didn't need to ask. The aura-refining disciple at the front looked behind him with some embarrassment. The Thunder Note talisman had been sent out for a long time. Although there was some distance between here and the Shaolei Hall, there should have been an echo. Looking at the quiet sky Thunder Peak, that disciple's eyes turned and he sighed. In this great battle, our Imperial Thunder sect suffered great losses. It said that less than 3 corpses were brought back. Most of the disciples' corpses were buried in foreign lands. Sigh, if it weren't for the fact that it was too difficult, who would be willing to abandon their fellow disciples' corpses in foreign lands? Xiao Hua nodded. This Xiao has seen several great battles. Sword cultivators are fierce, fighting each other to the death. If they win, they'll chase and kill. If they lose, they'll flee. Those who survived are more precious than those who died. We can't lose more disciples for corpses, right? We can only collect the corpses when we're certain of it. Moreover, the corpses of sword cultivators have always been together with the corpses of our Dao sword sect's cultivators. It's very difficult to distinguish them. Sword cultivators' sword attire is different from ours, right? The other disciples asked curiously. Xiao Hua shook his head. Under the influence of magic power and sword essence, there are very few corpses that can be intact. It's impossible to distinguish them just by their attire. The tragedy of the great battle can be seen from this, that disciple nodded. If not for Martial Uncle's reminder, we would have taken it for granted. Right. At this moment, a disciple at the 7th level of Qi refining hesitated for a long time before finally speaking. Martial Uncle Xiao, disciple wants to ask you something. Speak. Xiao Hua looked at this low-level disciple and said in the same kind manner. Do you know who Great Master Wu is? That disciple's face flushed red. He finally spoke the question that he had held back for who knows how many years. Not to mention this disciple, even the eyes of all the other disciples were filled with anticipation. Their ears also perked up. Hee, this old man has never seen this Nameless. Xiao Hua smiled and shook his head. However, there's never anything that's absolutely secret in this world. Since Nameless is a disciple of our Imperial Thunder sect, then sooner or later, we'll know who Nameless is. Moreover, this old man feels that it's not important whether we know who Nameless is or not. What's important is that we know that Nameless is right beside us. The disciples were clearly disappointed, but after hearing Xiao Hua's words, they came to a realization. The disciple at the front smiled apologetically. Martial Uncle Xiao, please don't blame us for being curious. Right now, the entire Imperial Thunder sect is in an uproar. Everyone is guessing who Great Master Wu is. That's right. After all, Great Master Wu is just a quiet person. As soon as he appeared, He saved the disciples of dozens of sects. He's the #1 hero in the great battle of Dao cultivators and the pride of our Imperial Thunder sect. Who doesn't want to know who he is? All the disciples shouted. Yihin Xiaohua had seen the cultivators unrelated to the Imperial Thunder sect in the meeting hall of Tongmu City frantically investigate nameless origins. Naturally, he understood the Imperial Thunder sect's enthusiasm for finding nameless. Moreover, he also understood that since the sword cultivators had already confirmed that he was nameless, this news would definitely spread to the Imperial Thunder sect after the end of the Great Battle of Dao Sword. At that time, he would have to see how he would cover it up. That's difficult. Xiaohua couldn't help but smile bitterly. Martial Uncle Xiao, then are you a terrifying phoenix? Another disciple gathered his courage and asked. Moreover, his gaze was secretly looking at Xiaohua's back. I naturally want to admit it. Xiaohua said ambiguously. Unfortunately, I don't have the phoenix dharma body. Even if I admit it, who would believe me? It can't be, right? The disciple wailed. I feel that besides martial Uncle Xiao, no other Foundation establishment master is worthy of the title of terrifying phoenix. That's right. Another disciple shouted. All the disciples who returned denied it. Only martial Uncle Xiao hasn't returned. How could there be anyone else besides martial Uncle Xiao? That's right. None of the Imperial Thunder sect disciples are terrifying phoenix. I'm the only Foundation establishment cultivator. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. However, the problem was that he really didn't have the phoenix dharma body. How could he admit it? Perhaps the terrifying phoenix has already fallen? Xiaohua asked tentatively. Impossible. All the disciples retorted in unison. How could the terrifying phoenix, who killed the sword cultivators of Huan country, fall in the Great War of Dao Sword? Anything is possible. Xiaohua replied faintly. He looked at the distant sky and smiled. I'm afraid Palace Lord Zhen is too busy? Or maybe the bad news of Sky Patrol City made him too busy to come over. Zhen, are there any special rules for the disciples who return from the war? If possible, I'm going to return to the Myriad Thunder Valley first. The disciple called Zhen Mo blushed as if he had lied. He stuttered, there are no special rules for the others. Even if the disciples who returned later, they would be welcomed by the martial uncle of Zhen Lei Palace. Martial Uncle Xiao was specially appointed by the Palace Lord to welcome him. At this point, Zhen Mo said carefully, Imperial Thunder sect only just received the news of Sky Patrol City's fall. However, although Sky Patrol City has fallen, our Dao sect may not lose the Great War of Dao Sword. Imperial Thunder sect disciples are still fighting a bloody battle. Although the Palace Lord is busy, he may still have time, right? Xiaohua was stunned. He had long known about the fall of the Sky Patrol City and the Imperial Thunder sect and Mo Sang Mountain's disciples being trapped in the city. Since the Imperial Thunder sect had received the news of the fall of the Sky Patrol City, they might not be unaware of the news that the Imperial Thunder sect's disciples had been captured by sword cultivators, right? However, Xiaohua soon understood. Imperial Thunder sect must have deliberately covered up the news for some special reasons. They did not want their disciples to know that their disciples had fallen into the enemy's hands. However, why did they not want to let them know? Xiaohua did not understand again. Chapter 3003. It's a prestigious sect. Is their reputation that important? Can they cover it up for a lifetime? Xiaohua immediately thought of the fallen Qianmo's actions seemed to be a standard Imperial Thunder sect disciple. Thinking here, Xiaohua felt a sense of dejection and powerlessness. He said faintly, since Martial Uncle Zhen is busy with work, then I'll... Before he finished speaking, two divine wills swept over from the sky Thunder Peak. Xiaohua was very familiar with one of them. Zhen Qing, Martial Uncle Zhen. Xiaohua didn't expect to meet Zhen Qing as soon as he returned to the Imperial Thunder sect. He couldn't help but think of Sun Qian. Since Zhen Qing came, Xiaohua naturally couldn't leave. He could only respectfully stand in the air. Not long later, two early-stage golden core state cultivators came together. The one in front was Zhen Qing, who Xiaohua was familiar with. Zhen Qing still had that melancholy expression, but there was more hair in her hair. Together with that melancholy, it added an indescribable charm. AI, no wonder. Xiaohua knew about the relationship between Zhen Qing, Sun Qian, and Chen Yi and couldn't help but sigh. Behind Zhen Qing was an ordinary golden core state cultivator with a similar build to Zhen Qing. Xiaohua didn't recognize him. However, Xiaohua still went up to greet them extremely respectfully. He bowed and said, "Junior Xiaohua greets the two martial uncles." The Qi refining disciples behind Xiaohua all said in unison, "Junior greets martial uncles." He, Xiaohua, stand up. "This is my Zhen Lei Palace's Jade Archive Hall Master, Qian Zhongliang. You probably haven't seen him before, right?" Zhen Qing didn't act courteous with Xiaohua and helped him up. "Oh, so it's the Jade Archive Hall Master." Xiaohua was a bit shocked as he looked at this ordinary golden core state cultivator. He already knew the importance of the Jade Archive Hall. The Jade Archive Hall of each sect was directly managed by the sect master. The Imperial Thunder sect put the Jade Archive Hall under the Zhen Lei Palace for ease of management. However, the Hall Master still reported directly to Master Qian Lei. To be able to hold the position of Jade Archive Hall Master, Qian Zhongliang must be Master Qian Lei's trusted disciple. Xiaohua admitted that he didn't know this trusted disciple from the Heavenly Thunder Palace before the Dao Sword battle. Disciple Xiaohua of the Myriad Thunder Valley greets Hall Master Qian. Xiaohua respectfully bowed again. "Get up. Xiaohua, you're the great hero of my thunder-controlling sect in the Dao Sword War. It is the pride of all Imperial Thunder sect disciples." Qian Zhongliang politely helped Xiaohua up while Zhen Qing ordered Zhen Mo and the others to continue their patrol. Qian Zhongliang continued, "Moreover, at the beginning of the war, all the life spirit tablets of the participating disciples were monitored. Now that the first stage of the war is over, all the monitoring life spirit tablets have been returned. Only your life spirit tablet is left there alone. Even if I don't want to pay attention to you, it's impossible." Hearing this, Xiaohua immediately thought of Zi Ming and Elder Wu's evaluation of the natal spirit tablet in Back Earth Stronghold, and a trace of displeasure appeared in his heart. However, he still smiled apologetically and said, "Thank you for your hard work, Hall Master Qian." Apart from the fallen seniors, there is also a portion of this junior's battle merits that should be given to the seniors in the rear like Hall Master. With the support of Hall Master Qian and the others, we can fight with all our might in the war. Hall Master Qian laughed. "I don't care what others say." But Martial Nephew Zhao's words, this old man has to consider it carefully. "Yes, Martial Nephew Xiao, your battle merits are really great. Hall Master Qian will be so happy that he can't close his mouth if you share some of your battle merits." Zhen Qing explained with a smile. Hearing this, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He said with a smile, "I'm just a foundation establishment cultivator. What battle merits can I have? I'm just basking in the glory of Li Zongbao of the Utopia faction and the first team of the conference hall." Fortunately, Zhen Qing didn't mention Wu Ming. Instead, she looked at Xiaohua kindly, just like when she brought Xiaohua to the Feather Deity Conference dozens of years ago. "You're already very good. Let's not talk about the other battle merits. In the war, you and Cui Hongshan of the Thunder Palace protected the first team of the Imperial Thunder sect. Just this is enough to make all the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect admire you. Yes, whether it's Zhen Minghui, Su Qing, Zhen Hua, Qiu Su, Bai Sugu, Dui Ling and Ming Mao, when they returned to the Sky Thunder Peak, the first thing they did was to earnestly ask for your merits. They said that if it weren't for you and Cui Hongshan, they wouldn't have returned alive. Especially your first team of the Imperial Thunder sect. Except for the two female disciples, Dui Ling and Ming Mao, the cultivation of the other 8 people in the war advanced by leaps and bounds, far surpassing the others. It's really enviable." Qian Zhongliang also echoed with a smile. Seeing 2 golden core cultivators talking and laughing in front of him, If Xiaohua was really a foundation establishment cultivator, he would definitely be a little nervous. But now, his real cultivation had reached the late stage of the golden core stage. In terms of strength, he was not inferior to the early stage of the original infant stage. He really didn't put the cultivation of these two people in his eyes. His respect for Zhen Qing came from the bottom of his heart. He didn't have any feelings towards this Qian Zhongliang. Now that he was smiling and pretending to be respectful, he was a little impatient. As if she saw Xiaohua's unnatural expression, Zhen Qing smiled and said, "Xiaohua, with your merits, my Zhen Lei Palace Lord, Zhen Yunzi, should personally come and welcome you." Furthermore, he had already sent out an order. Unfortunately, he wasn't in the Zhen Lei Palace these few days. Zhen Mo's message couldn't reach him in time and could only be sent to Hall Master General recently. "I was sent by the sect leader to assist Hall Master Zhen in the Jade Archive Hall. Thinking that we are old friends, I accompanied Hall Master Zhen to welcome you." Logically speaking, the two of us weren't the only ones who came to welcome you. Qian Zhongliang glanced at Zhen Qing and explained, "When the 100,000 disciples returned to the mountain, the entire Zhen Lei Palace came out. Martial nephew Zhao's return should have been a more grand ceremony, but..." Without waiting for Qian Zhongliang to finish, Xiaohua smiled and said, "I have always liked peace and quiet. When I came back just now, I was worried that it would be lively. When Zhen Mo sent out the Thunder Note talisman, I wanted to stop him. However, I heard that it was an order from the Palace Lord, so I didn't dare to say anything. The fact that the two seniors are here already makes me anxious. In my opinion, the best thing to do now is to return to the 10,000 Thunder Valley." "Ha, Hall Master Qian, see? Did I tell you? Martial nephew Xiao doesn't like crowds. I know this." Zhen Qing seemed to be very happy as she smiled and said, "Back then, during the Feather Immortal gathering, he didn't say anything and gave us a fright." "Yes, indeed. Just now, I said that no matter what, I would bring the disciples of the Jade Archive Hall over. However, I was stopped by Junior Zhen." Qian Zhongliang nodded and said, "However, Martial nephew Xiao can't return to the 10,000 Thunder Valley now. You are now the most popular person in the Imperial Thunder Sect. When I received the Thunder Note talisman, I had already sent a message talisman to the Palace Lord. Follow me back to the Jade Archive Hall and see what the Palace Lord has arranged. Yes, the sect matters are more important than anything else. I will listen to the two seniors' instructions." Xiao Huan naturally understood that he had no choice but to return to the Imperial Thunder Sect. Not to mention that he had to report to Master Qian Lazy and the others in detail when he saw them. He would have to communicate with the 8 great thunder palaces for several months without sleep or rest. Therefore, he could only reply with a bow. "Let's go," Zhen Qing said with a smile. "Xiaohua has finally returned to the Imperial Thunder Sect. We shouldn't stay here any longer. Other than Shan Feng, there are no other disciples here to welcome him. Let him sit in the Jade Archive Hall and have a good rest." "Ah, that's right." Qian Zhongliang looked around. Although the air around the three of them was empty and no disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect dared to disturb them, in the air not far away, on the mountain peak, there were many disciples on patrol. Moreover, there were still many disciples quietly flying over. Obviously, they had heard the news and came to see with their own eyes this Foundation establishment disciple who had become famous because of the Dao Sword battle. Seeing this scene, Qian Zhongliang smiled and said, "I was thinking that there were no disciples to welcome Martial nephew Xiao. I felt guilty and forgot about this matter. Now, we should invite Martial nephew Xiao to have a rest. Otherwise, our Imperial Thunder Sect won't even have a disciple on patrol." "Seniors, please," Xiaohua said with a smile. "Disciple is already very satisfied to have 2 seniors to welcome me." "Oh, let's go," Qian Zhongliang said and activated his magic power. His figure took the lead, but his flying speed was not fast. Obviously, he was waiting for Xiaohua. Then, Zhen Qing accompanied Xiaohua and flew behind Qian Zhongliang. After flying like this for half a cup of tea's time, Xiaohua looked at Zhen Qing next to him. This man with a story, his lips moved a bit as if he wanted to say something. After all, although Sun Qian did not let Xiaohua tell Zhen Qing about this matter, Xiaohua did not agree. He still wanted to make things clear. Oh, nephew, is there something wrong? Zhen Qing was extremely sensitive and asked with a smile. Oh, the moment Zhen Qing asked, Xiaohua laughed in his heart. He had not even dealt with Fairy Hong Xia and Xue Xue. Why should he worry about other people's old affairs? Maybe Zhen Qing was the same as Sun Qian and did not want to let him know. Disciple thanks Senior Master for the jade slip. Xiaohua hurriedly said, if not for Senior Master's generosity, this junior might not be able to have such cultivation today. What Xiaohua said was the truth. Zhen Qing's understanding of condensing the golden core was extremely important for Xiaohua to condense the golden core. Moreover, the exquisite gold was obtained from Zhen Qing. The wishful staff was also refined because of Zhen Qing. Zhen Qing's favor was indeed big. Xiaohua could not thank him enough. But how could Zhen Qing know about this? Sweeping a glance at Qian Zhongliang, he waved his hand and said, that jade slip is this old man's token of gratitude. It will still be useful in the future. You should understand more. Chapter 3004. Xiaohua laughed bitterly. That jade slip had been taken away by Chen Yi a long time ago. Moreover, according to what Sun Qian said earlier, she seemed to have been lured over by an old treasure of Zhen Qing in Chen Yi's possession and fell into Qin Yuming's trap. At this moment, when he thought about it, perhaps it was that jade slip. If that was the case, how could he comprehend the jade slip now that it was in Sun Qian's hands? However, Xiaohua didn't dare to point it out. He smiled and said, yes. In his heart, he had already made up his mind. When he returned to the 10,000 Thunder Valley, the first thing he would do was to refine a pile of rejuvenation pills and give them to Zhen Qing first. Although I can't get involved in the matter between Zhen Qing and Sun Qian, I can at least add fuel to the fire. By the way, how is Junior's master? Xiaohua suddenly thought of something. The last time he saw Cui Hongshan, he already knew that Cui Hongshan was helplessly in closed-door cultivation and hadn't come out for many years. Now that it had been several years, he was afraid that Cui Hongshan had already reached the Jindan stage, right? But as soon as Xiaohua's words came out, he regretted it again. He blamed himself for not being able to keep his composure. Since he had already returned to the Imperial Thunder Sect, there would be a day when he could return to the Myriad Thunder Valley. He only needed to take a look, understood? If Zhen Qing asked him how he knew that he had no choice but to go into seclusion, how would he answer her? After all, he had no choice but to go into seclusion after the battle. Fortunately, Zhen Qing did not suspect anything. He thought for a moment and frowned. I have always been in charge of the Jade Archive Hall. I have never paid attention to the matters in the 10,000 Thunder Valley. However, it seemed that he hadn't heard any news about helplessness, nor was there any report of him advancing to core formation. I'm afraid he hasn't come out of seclusion yet. When Xiaohua heard this, he sucked in a breath of cold air and said anxiously, Martial Uncle, I'm afraid Master has already been in seclusion for a long time, right? Is everything all right? It's hard to say. Zhen Qing didn't hide it and said, core condensation is even more difficult than foundation establishment. Everyone's fortuitous encounters were also different. Some succeeded in a few days, while others took several years. Of course, there are also those like your master who have been cultivating for decades. However, the longer one stayed in closed-door meditation, the less advantageous it was for foundation establishment. On the other hand, due to the lack of foundation, the lack of comprehension. Xiaohua sighed. I don't think so. Qian Zhongliang spoke from the front. Unfortunately, Martial Nephew has always been in charge of the Myriad Thunder Valley. That place is not a place where ordinary people can stay for long. Since he was able to condense a core under 10,000 lightning bolts, then the time was also normal. Furthermore, as time passes, his divine sense, tempered by countless bolts of lightning, will be able to comprehend the lightning refinement even more thoroughly. If he were to condense his core, he would definitely be 40% more powerful than ordinary gold core cultivators. That's right. Zhen Qing also came to a realization. I forgot about the lightning birth and lightning destruction in the Myriad Lightning Valley. This was indeed the case. Since that's the case, Xiaohua, you don't have to worry. You and Cui Hongshan have contributed greatly to the Myriad Thunder Valley. Yes, Dui Qiming is also in your Myriad Thunder Valley now. The Myriad Thunder Valley is the most famous place in my Imperial Thunder sect. According to your master's temperament, if he saw such prosperity after coming out of seclusion, wouldn't he be grinning from ear to ear? Indeed. Xiaohua had also stayed in the 10,000 Thunder Valley before, so he knew how powerful the 10,000 Thunder Valley was. He knew that what Qian Zhongliang said was true, and when he thought about how his master couldn't close his mouth, he couldn't help but smile. I'm afraid that master won't scold this junior again in the future. How could that be? It definitely won't happen in the future. Zhen Qing seemed to know about Xiaohua's situation in the Myriad Thunder Valley and said with a big laugh. Not only did he not treat a great contributor like you well, he even scolded you. Even if the Thunder Mesa spiritual master didn't say anything, Lord Sect Master would have already spoken. At this point, Zhen Qing's eyes turned and he transmitted his voice. Xiaohua, this old man wants to ask you something. Are you that terrifying phoenix? Sweat, Xiaohua heard from Zhen Mo that the terrifying phoenix and Nameless, who were regarded as the two mysteries of the Dao Sword War in Twilight Tong City, were still very popular in the Imperial Thunder sect. However, he didn't expect that even a gold core cultivator like Zhen Qing would be so concerned about him. Xiaohua hesitated. He didn't want to lie to Zhen Qing, but if he admitted that he was the terrifying phoenix, would Zhen Qing ask him if he was nameless? However, when Xiaohua was hesitating, Zhen Qing said mysteriously. When your Imperial Thunder Sect's first team returned, Fairy Xianhua had already asked Cui Hongshan and the others. Unfortunately, they were hesitant and didn't dare to say it clearly. They only said that they would ask you after you returned. Xiaohua laughed. He already understood that although Cui Hongshan and the others didn't say that he was the terrifying phoenix, in reality, they had already revealed the truth that he had the phoenix's Dharma body. Fairy Xianhua and the others also saw it, so they didn't ask. Otherwise, with Fairy Xianhua's identity as the Earth Thunder Palace's palace master, how could she not ask for the details? Zhen Qing transmitted her voice to ask him just to confirm it. I won't hide it from Martial Uncle. Xiaohua transmitted his voice. This junior wants to admit that I am the terrifying phoenix, but this junior can't take out the phoenix's Dharma body now. That thing was destroyed by the enemy in the war. Zhen Qing was stunned. Looking at Xiaohua's calm appearance, he asked with concern, then, was your cultivation affected in any way? Xiaohua's heart warmed and he said with a smile, it was a matter of several years ago. Now, it's already very good. Then that's good. Knowing that Xiaohua admitted it, Zhen Qing said with some regret, it's a pity that my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples can't see your terrifying phoenix's Dharma body with their own eyes and intimidate the sword cultivators. Yes, because I don't have the phoenix's Dharma body, this junior didn't dare to admit it. I was afraid that others would say that this junior took the credit for nothing. Xiaohua took the opportunity to explain. If it's your credit, then it's yours. Why should you care about others? Zhen Qing didn't think so. But after saying that, he seemed to think of something and said with a bitter smile, it's easy for this old man to say this, but it's too difficult to do it. How could an ordinary person be able to do such a thing? If you don't have the phoenix's Dharma body and admit that you are the terrifying phoenix, then it's really difficult. Your matter is indeed somewhat difficult. Actually, it doesn't matter, Xiaohua said with a smile. Now, this disciple has enough. Zhen Qing smiled but didn't say anything. After flying for a while, seeing that the Thunder Shao Hall was close at hand, a sharp sound of thunder came from afar. A thunder talisman that Xiaohua had never seen before landed in front of Qian Zhongliang. Qian Zhongliang took the thunder talisman and looked at it, then said with a smile, Martial Uncle Zhen Shengzi sent a message, asking us to go to the Thunder Immortal Peak's Great Thunder Hall. It seems that Fairy Xianhua is going to reward Xiaohua heavily. Zhen Shengzi? Zhen Lei Palace's palace lord is also a nascent soul martial ancestor now? Only now did Xiaohua realize. He remembered that when he met Gen Lei Palace's palace lord in the Great Thunder Hall, Gen Lei Palace's palace lord didn't seem to be a nascent soul cultivator yet. Now, the Golden Core cultivator back then had successfully advanced to the Master Realm. While he was improving, others were also improving. Since Qian Zhongliang received Zhen Xingzi's message, he naturally didn't dare to stay. He turned around and flew towards the Thunder Immortal Peak. Zhen Qing brought Xiao Hua along and circulated her magic power, then said with a smile, "A Dao sword battle that lasted more than 10 years, my Imperial Thunder sect has also changed. Not only is Daoist Quangyan a new nascent soul master, even my Gen Lei Palace's palace lord has successfully conceived a nascent soul. There's also that Wu Ming." Qian Zhongliang said with a curious tone, "It's only been 10 years, my Imperial Thunder sect actually gave birth to 3 nascent soul cultivators. This is really important to my Imperial Thunder sect." "Alas, yes." Zhen Qing looked at the silent Xiao Hua and sighed. Disciples like Xiao Hua, who not only returned safely, but also made great contributions to the sect, are really rare. Those disciples who died on the battlefield were all the elites of my Imperial Thunder sect. If not for the appearance of these 3 nascent soul martial uncles, my Imperial Thunder sect's strength would be greatly reduced. It's a pity that we still haven't found Wu Ming." Qian Zhongliang said with a bitter smile. "This old man doesn't understand. What was this great teacher Wu playing at? His appearance not only intimidated the splendid sect, Qiqiao sect, and Xuanyan school, but also brought our Imperial Thunder sect the gratitude of the sects of the 3 kingdoms. Even if he doesn't covet fame and disdains the sect's rewards, he still has to consider the sect's overall situation. Perhaps Martial Uncle Wu has his own ideas." Zhen Qing was a disciple of Gen Lei Palace, so she clearly didn't see as far as Qian Zhongliang. She said with a smile, "Right now, Palace Lord Zhen's cultivation hasn't been revealed yet. It's better to let the other sects pay more attention to Martial Uncle Wu." "Alas, Palace Lord Zhen." Qian Zhongliang sighed and looked at Zhen Qing sympathetically. "I heard that when Sect Lord wasn't in seclusion, he found an opportunity to hold a nascent soul formation hall for Palace Lord. However, later on he had to welcome the disciples who returned from the war and arrange for Daoist Miyu and Daoist Quangyan to go to the battlefield. Right now, Fairy Xianhua also said that she was prepared to hold a ceremony for him before the war when my Imperial Thunder sect disciples returned victorious. However, who knew? When Xiaohua heard this, he naturally knew that Zhen Yunzi's nascent soul formation hall was disrupted by the Imperial Thunder sect disciples falling into Sky Patrol City. Moreover, the current situation of the war was unclear. Even if the Dao sect won, the Imperial Thunder sect disciples would be rescued and the Imperial Thunder sect wouldn't be able to celebrate their victory. Zhen Yunzi's nascent soul formation hall probably couldn't be held anymore. The nascent soul formation hall was a recognition for a cultivator from an ordinary cultivator to a grandmaster. It was also an opportunity to spread the news to the various sects in the cultivation world. Not holding a ceremony was like not being recognized by a dual cultivation partner. Although it wouldn't affect dual cultivation, it was still a pity. Daoist Quangyan didn't hold a nascent soul formation hall either. Zhen Qing said with a smile, "When Daoist Quangyan, Daoist Miyu and Martial Uncle Wu return, the 3 of them can hold a ceremony together." Qian Zhongliang was slightly surprised. He rolled his eyes and seemed to understand that Zhen Qing really didn't know. Only then did he send a voice transmission. "What?" Zhen Qing's expression changed greatly. She said with an incredulous tone, "How is that possible?" Chapter 3005. Zhen Qing glanced at Xiaohua and didn't point it out. Instead, she asked Qian Zhongliang, "About this matter, why didn't Fairy Xianhua announce it earlier? Such a big matter, even if she doesn't say it now, people will know about it sooner or later. Perhaps our Imperial Thunder sect has sealed the news, but isn't it already spreading outside? How can our Imperial Thunder sect disciples endure this? This is the decision of the Great Thunder Palace. You and I have no right to comment." Qian Zhongliang pondered for a moment and said, perhaps the masters of the Great Thunder Palace feel that it will affect the morale, so it's not convenient to announce it now. Alas, I have been engrossed in cultivation and haven't thought about this. Zhen Qing sighed and said, thank you for your guidance, Palace Master. Don't mention it. Qian Zhongliang said, even if I don't say it now, when you follow me to the Great Thunder Palace in a while, you will definitely know. Alas, it's better not to know. Zhen Qing muttered a few words and didn't say anything else. Obviously, the joy of seeing Xiaohua just now had disappeared. The Thunder Immortal Peak and the Great Thunder Palace weren't close to the Imperial Thunder Palace. Xiaohua didn't use his magic power, so under Zhen Qing's lead, they arrived in less than half a meal's time. Seeing the somewhat familiar mountain peak and the vaguely familiar palace, Xiaohua sighed with emotion. Ordinary disciples might not even be able to visit the Great Thunder Palace in their lifetime. He had only been a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect for a few decades, and this was already his second visit. Xiaohua didn't dare to release his divine sense or Buddhist awareness. Just as Zhen Qing approached the Thunder Immortal Peak, a series of rumbling sounds came from the Thunder Immortal Peak. Immediately after, a huge fireball rushed out from the peak and flew high into the sky. With a boom, it exploded again. Lightning shot in all directions and the tricolored brilliance formed a curtain of light that floated in the air. Boom, boom. Immediately after, two more loud sounds came and two more fireballs flew out. After exploding, the tricolored brilliance merged with the previous brilliance and covered the entire Thunder Immortal Peak. Immediately after, countless thunderous sounds came from the curtain of light and a line of large words appeared. It was, welcome Xiaohua's triumphant return to the sect. Haha. Qian Zhongliang laughed loudly. I didn't expect Palace Master Zhen to hold the welcoming ceremony here. Martial niece Xiao aside, even I am pleasantly surprised. Zhen Qing explained with a smile on her face. This is our Imperial Lightning Sect's welcoming ceremony for returning disciples. Ordinary disciples only have one level. Even after the last battle, all the disciples only have 3 levels. Today, just for you to achieve 3 levels of thunder, is already the highest honor this old man knows. Just as Zhen Qing finished her explanation, 3 more groups of male and female disciples flew out from the Thunder Immortal Peak. They were all at the Qi refining stage. They flew to Xiaohua and bowed in the air. One group after another, they shouted with different pitches, on behalf of the 8 Thunder Palaces of the Imperial Thunder Sect, we thank Xiaohua, Martial Uncle Xiaohua, for his contribution to the Imperial Thunder Sect in the Dao Sword War. Welcome back, Martial Uncle Xiao. Xiaohua glanced at Zhen Qing and quickly flew out. He returned the greeting and said, Martial nephews, please rise. This Xiao is a member of my Imperial Thunder Sect and should fight for my Imperial Thunder Sect. This is this Xiao's duty. There's no need for thanks. Ha, Xiaohua, Xiaohua. A voice familiar to Xiaohua sounded from behind the disciples. It was the Thunder Palace's Palace Master, Thunder Tablet Reverend. I didn't expect to see you 3 times. Other than the first time when you didn't enter the Imperial Thunder Sect, the last 2 times were when you made great contributions to my Imperial Thunder Sect. Looking at you, this old man's face is glowing. I don't dare. Facing Thunder Tablet Reverend, Xiaohua was just like facing Zhen Qing. He felt grateful and hurriedly bowed. Although this junior has some battle merits, the glory of these battle merits should belong to those disciples who fell on the battlefield. Their contributions far exceed this junior's. They have their glory, also have your glory. These two cannot be mixed together. The glory that you have earned for my Imperial Thunder Sect is not something that they can earn. Behind Thunder Tablet Reverend, Zhen Yunzi also appeared and said with a smile, this old man has already told all the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples that if you, a great contributor, return, this old man will definitely welcome you at the Sky Thunder Peak. But now that the Great Thunder Palace is in trouble, this old man has no choice but to go back on his words. The 2 martial ancestors are busy with official business. For you to come and welcome this junior is already very grateful. Xiaohua was indeed moved and said respectfully, This junior feels from the bottom of my heart that any price is worth it to make some contributions to my Imperial Thunder sect. Good, this old man likes these words. Jen Yunzi clapped his hands and said, first there is the Imperial Thunder sect, then there are my Imperial Thunder sect disciples. Everything should be based on the righteousness of my Imperial Thunder sect. All personal benefits must be placed behind the benefits of my Imperial Thunder sect. Yes, this junior thanks martial ancestor Jen for your guidance. This junior will use these words as a guiding light in the future. I will correct my actions. Xiao Hua nodded and said with a smile, make more contributions to my Imperial Thunder sect and strive for my Imperial Thunder sect to suppress Shanghua sect, Qiqiao sect, and Xuanyan school as soon as possible. Haha. Without waiting for Xiao Hua to finish, Thunder Tablet Reverend laughed and said, I will say these words behind closed doors. Don't spread this out, or else Sun Yunzi will find trouble with you. Hehe, this disciple is not afraid of Senior Sun Yunzi. This disciple has the sect master behind him. Xiao Hua said with a smile, this disciple will definitely make this disciple's lifelong pursuit. Good. If every disciple of my Imperial Thunder sect is like Xiao Hua, why would my Imperial Thunder sect not be able to dominate the Dawn Rain continent? Jen Yunzi clapped his hands and praised. Xiao Hua, you followed the first team of the discussion hall to the Han country to train. Did you make any mistakes? Thunder Tablet Reverend asked with concern. Good, I will let the palace master know that the four of us returned safely without any losses. Xiao Hua replied. Very good. Thunder Tablet Reverend nodded. Training is your own matter. This old man and the others will not ask too much. You must have worked hard. Quickly return to the Myriad Thunder Valley. After resting for a period of time, this old man will. Hearing this, Xiao Hua was delighted. He knew that the reason he was allowed to return to the Myriad Thunder Valley was to report the matter of Qian Qinghua. However, without waiting for Thunder Tablet Reverend to finish, Jen Yunzi spoke. Senior brother Thunder Tablet, let Xiao Hua make a trip to the Great Thunder Hall. Fairy Xian Hua has something to ask Xiao Hua. Thunder Tablet Reverend was slightly stunned. Clearly, Fairy Xian Hua did not mention this matter when they came out of the Great Thunder Hall. However, Thunder Tablet Reverend immediately understood and nodded. Indeed, Xiao Hua has returned from training outside. He should know more about the news outside. Yes, this junior will listen to martial ancestors' instructions. Xiao Hua was somewhat helpless, but he could only nod his head in agreement. It seemed that the matter of Qian Qinghua could only be discussed in the Great Thunder Hall. Qian Zhongliang and Zhen Qing, come in too. Jen Yunzi pointed his finger and said, you are in charge of the Jade Archive Hall. The decisions from now on have something to do with you. Yes, Qian Zhongliang and Zhen Qing were as respectful as Xiao Hua. The three of them followed the two nascent soul masters and flew into the Great Thunder Hall. However, the three thunderous roars of the Thunder Immortal Peak had already alarmed the entire Imperial Thunder sect. The disciples of the various Thunder Palaces were all astonished. Many disciples came out to inquire, and the patrolling disciples had already passed the news of Xiao Hua's return to the mountain to the various Thunder Palaces. Envy, ecstasy, jealousy, and other different gazes began to converge, staring at the previously unknown Myriad Thunder Valley that was now gradually revealing its ferociousness. Inside the Great Thunder Hall, just like before, two incomparably huge pillars propped up the entire space. The purple lightning talismans on the four walls and the roof of the hall flowed unhurriedly, as if the past few decades were just an instant. However, the number of people gathered in the Great Thunder Hall today was a lot more than the last time Xiao Hua came. Above the 8 praying mats, except for the praying mat in the center and the 3 praying mats below, there were many old men standing below the praying mats. With a glance, Xiao Hua could clearly distinguish that these gold-core old men were divided into 8 positions. If nothing unexpected happened, they should be the hall masters or elders of the 8 great Thunder Palaces. Xiao Hua's face carried a respectful and humble expression. Except for the instant he stepped into the Great Thunder Hall, he didn't raise his head again, allowing all kinds of gazes to fall on him. Only after Qian Zhongliang and Zhen Qing had greeted him did Xiao Hua step forward and salute the palace masters and hall masters. Xiao Hua. A gentle voice came from one of the praying mats. It was the Earth Thunder Palace's palace master, Fairy Xianhua. After Master Qian Lazy went into seclusion, she temporarily took over the sect master's authority and acted as the 8 Great Thunder Palace's representative. Junior is here. Xiaohua raised his head and looked at Fairy Xianhua. When Xiaohua entered the Imperial Thunder sect, he also came to the Great Thunder Hall. Even Fairy Xianhua and the others were at his side. However, at that time, the entire Great Thunder Hall's brilliance was focused on Master Qian Lazy alone. To tell the truth, Xiaohua only answered the sect master's words in fear and only paid attention to Master Qian Lazy and Reverend Lei Meng. Fairy Xianhua and the others only glanced at them, so he couldn't see their appearances clearly. At this moment, when Xiaohua raised his head, he saw Fairy Xianhua's square face. Her appearance couldn't be considered to be extremely beautiful, but her thick eyebrows, bright eyes, slightly pursed lips, and especially her ears that hung down to her shoulders, all of them revealed a graceful, luxurious, and calm aura. You have made great contributions in this battle. Long before the sect master went into seclusion, he already knew about it. He even specially issued the sect master's special pardon order to commend your battle achievements. Fairy Xianhua said very amiably, although this is the second time this old woman has seen you. However, it seems that both times I've seen you, you have made extremely outstanding contributions to my Imperial Thunder sect. Both of them made this old woman feel gratified and let this old man see the bright future of my Imperial Thunder sect. Both of them made this old woman believe that the Imperial Thunder sect will definitely flourish in the hands of junior disciples like you and become the #1 sect in the Dawn Rain continent. Hearing Fairy Xianhua praise him like this, which really didn't match the identity of a nascent Soul Palace master, Xiaohua was startled and said with a smile, Junior was just lucky. I don't dare to speak too much about my achievements. Chapter 3006. No, I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. Fairy Xianhua waved her hand and said, when we were talking to the palace masters of the Thunder Palace, we were all sighing with emotion. It seems that we didn't make so many contributions like you in the Great War of Dao Sword or even the Great War of Immortals and Demons. You deserve such praise. You deserve it. Thank you for your praise, Grandmaster. Xiaohua originally wanted to tell her about Qian Qinghua, but under Fairy Xianhua's praise, he was embarrassed to say it. Being able to find Qian Qinghua was needless to say, it was a great contribution. Yes, I don't need to say more. You went through a lot of hardships in the Great War of Dao Sword. When you return to the Imperial Thunder sect, the sect will definitely treat you well. All kinds of glory will follow. Fairy Xianhua nodded and said, Today, you just returned to the sect, so I called you to the Great Thunder Palace because I have something important to check with you. Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. Damn it, are you going to directly interrogate John Doe's identity? Take a look at this communication talisman. Did you send it? Fairy Xianhua stretched out her hand, took out a jade slip from her storage pouch, and casually threw it in front of Xiaohua. Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and seemed to know something. After he finished reading the jade slip, he returned it to Fairy Xianhua and nodded, reporting to Grandmaster, this was sent by me. There is my mark in it. However, when I received the news that the Sword Cultivator's target was Sky Patrol City, I was already in Huan country and could not return. Moreover, with my strength, it was very difficult to cross Huan country. Therefore, I asked a familiar senior to bring this communication talisman back to Sky Patrol City. As for who this senior is, I hope Grandmaster can understand. I have already promised that senior not to reveal his name. Speaking of this, Xiaohua hesitated and said, On my way back to the sect, I received some news. It seems that Sky Patrol City has fallen and my Imperial Thunder sect disciple has also fallen into the hands of the Sword Cultivator. As for the merit of sending the message, let's not talk about it. That's right. Fairy Xianhua smiled and said, You're not greedy for merit because you're reasonable and take the overall situation into consideration. Today, I've called you to Colossal Thunder Hall precisely for this reason. This junior has already obtained enough battle merits. This can't be considered any merit. Xiao Hua once again expressed his attitude. Although the message within the Jade Slip was extremely important, if the nascent soul elders of the Dao sect took it seriously, it would definitely be considered the greatest contribution in the Great Dao Sword War. But since the battle had developed to this point, Xiao Hua would definitely not say another word on the transmission talisman. Actually, when it comes to the Great War of Dao and Sword, due to Junior Brother Nameless, our Imperial Thunder sect took the most credit for it. Fairy Xian Hua changed the topic and said with some pain, "This is extremely beneficial to the position of my Imperial Thunder sect in the state of Shi and the distribution of benefits after the war. Although our Imperial Thunder sect lost many disciples in the Great War of Dao and Sword, our losses far exceed those of the other sections. However, with the distribution of spirit veins in the future, the division of areas for recruitment of disciples, and other benefits, we can make up for it slightly. But now, our Imperial Thunder sect's disciples are completely trapped in Sky Patrol City, and we're one of the 2 sects that have been captured by the Sword Cultivators. This was definitely a laughingstock. Everything and all our previous efforts have turned into flowing water. Even if Shanghua sect and the other sects mention the distribution of benefits in the state of Shi again, I'm afraid our Imperial Thunder sect won't get any more." Xiao Hua was baffled, but he vaguely knew that this Great War of Dao and Sword was far from simple. Not only was it related to the defeat of the Sword Cultivators in the state of Huan, not only was it related to the cultivation of disciples, but it was also related to the position of the Imperial Thunder sect in the state of Shi and the distribution of benefits in the state of Shi. In short, the fall of the Imperial Thunder sect in Sky Patrol City not only caused the Imperial Thunder sect to lose face, but also caused the Imperial Thunder sect to suffer a great loss. Therefore, the fall of the Imperial Thunder sect's disciples in Sky Patrol City. Someone must be responsible for this. Fairy Xianhua said very naturally, and we also have to give an explanation to the disciples who are waiting for our Imperial Thunder sect's triumphant return. We have to let them understand our painstaking efforts and the difficulties of the disciples who are fighting outside. Sigh, poor Taoist Quangtian. Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh when he heard this. He already somewhat understood in his heart. This is the first time he participated in a great war as a nascent soul grandmaster. He has to be the scapegoat. Although the Imperial Thunder sect has 2 nascent soul cultivators, Taoist Miyu and Taoist Quangtian, from what Fairy Xianhua said, she wouldn't put the responsibility on Taoist Miyu. Sigh, it's this Xiao who has harmed Taoist Quangtian. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have sent this message talisman to Qian Diheng. I originally wanted to give this merit to him. But who will bear this responsibility? As expected by Xiao Hua, Fairy Xianhua immediately said, in the message talisman sent by Taoist Miyu, it was clearly stated that the support of Sky Patrol City was done by my Imperial Thunder sect alone. Although it was also agreed upon by my Dao sect's commander, after all, it was my Imperial Thunder sect's own initiative. Although Taoist Miyu didn't say it clearly in the Jade Slip, the message talisman was given by Taoist Quangtian. Taoist Miyu originally thought that this was a sword cultivator's trick, but with Xiaohua's confirmation, this news is true. Therefore, when it comes to responsibility, Taoist Quangtian takes 30%. Oh, that's good. Xiaohua's heart was finally at ease. Fairy Xianhua's words are reasonable. After all, it was Taoist Miyu who made the decision. Taoist Quangtian takes 30%, so Taoist Miyu takes 70%. As for the remaining 70%, this old one, or should I say, most of the palace masters and hall masters in my Great Thunder Hall think that. Fairy Xianhua's tone paused slightly, and she said word by word, should belong to this message talisman. If it weren't for this message talisman, the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples wouldn't have supported Sky Patrol City alone, and wouldn't have fallen into the hands of sword cultivators. Hearing this, Xiaohua's originally calm heart suddenly tightened. He almost didn't dare to believe his own ears. He raised his head to look at Fairy Xianhua in astonishment, and Fairy Xianhua looked at Xiaohua with bright eyes. That's right. Fairy Xianhua added, the culprit is the message talisman that sent out the true news. That is Yu Xiaohua. Senior Xianhua. Without waiting for Xiaohua to say anything, Thundermeng Daoist became angry and said with a sneer, You? Aren't you reversing black and white? How come I don't know when you came to such a conclusion? Xiaohua being able to find out the true goal of the sword cultivators was already a huge contribution. If you don't reward him, that's fine, but you can't blame this disciple for falling into the hands of the enemy, on him, right? Junior Lei Meng, then tell me, if it weren't for Xiaohua's message talisman, would Kuang Tian have thought that Sky Patrol City was the sword cultivator's true purpose? Would he have persuaded you to lead all the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples to support Sky Patrol City? Fairy Xianhua said indifferently, the root of all this is Xiaohua's message talisman. Senior Xianhua, you're wrong. Thundermeng Daoist shook his head, whether it's Xiaohua, Kuang Tian, or Miyu, they're all right. The only wrong thing is that the sword cultivator's methods are too powerful. My Dao sect disciples were caught off guard. Even if we knew the sword cultivator's true purpose and made countermeasures, we still couldn't stop their plan. Xiaohua was already stunned, he didn't know what to say and could only listen quietly. The sword cultivators are powerful, and I'm afraid they're going to win this battle. Fairy Xianhua wasn't as agitated as Thundermeng Daoist. Instead she said indifferently, my Dao sect is going to be defeated, the other sects have been defeated, but they didn't fall into the enemy's hands. Needless to say, my Imperial Thunder sect has also become the cause of this great defeat. The disciples of Imperial Thunder sect and Mo Sang Mountain will also become the sharp weapons used by the sword cultivators to threaten my Dao sect. This responsibility must be shouldered by someone. Do you think the Palace Master of Canlei Palace, Miyu Daoist, is more suitable, or the new nascent Soul Master, Kuang Tian? It's not necessary for someone to shoulder the responsibility. Thundermeng Daoist smiled bitterly, this is my Dao sect's mistaken command. My Imperial Thunder sect is a famous sect. Criticism and self-criticism are necessary, otherwise my Imperial Thunder sect will never be able to improve, and will never be able to become the #1 sect in the country of Xi. Fairy Xianhua said, we can't wait for the other sects to blame us before thinking of remedy. We must find the root of the matter before it is announced, and bravely shoulder the responsibility and obligation that a large sect should shoulder. Thundermeng Daoist looked at the people of Colossal Thunder Palace, his eyes narrowed and said coldly, this matter? I presume everyone has already discussed it without I knowing? It should be a collective decision, right? That's right. Fairy Xianhua didn't evade and said, Xiaohua's contribution in this battle is great, and he's definitely the most brilliant star of my Imperial Thunder sect today. However, he's still only at the middle stage of foundation establishment, and he's still young. Too many honors, too many flowers may not be a good thing. What he needs to do now is to calm his mind and see the dangers ahead. Experiencing more setbacks now isn't a bad thing. In my opinion, this matter is also a kind of disguised encouragement for him. Bullshit encouragement, bullshit good thing. Thundermeng Daoist couldn't help but curse. Let's not talk about his hard-earned battle merits being erased, but now he's being punished because of this real news. You all still glorify it by saying that you're concerned about his growth. At this point, Thundermeng Daoist was about to fly up from the praying mat, but after getting up, he hesitated. Obviously, this matter was a collective decision. If he left, Colossal Thunder Palace would only have Xiaohua, and wouldn't he be at their mercy? He really couldn't leave. As for Zhen Qing, who was biased towards Xiaohua, because she didn't have any qualifications to speak in Colossal Thunder Palace, her face changed greatly. Other than anxiety, there was also deep regret. Senior brother Thundermeng, don't be impatient. Zhen Yunzi said with a smile. Thundermeng Daoist snorted and sat down. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.